Chapter 1890. If the horned dragon before them was really a dragon king, it did not make sense. Reaching the level of a king was already a whole new level, far beyond the true self realm. Any king realm cultivator would be able to conquer the land and dominate a region. The great Jin immortal kingdom was ruled by an unparalleled immortal king. It had 16 counties and more than 1,000 cities. Its territory was vast, and this Dragon Abyss planet was only an insignificant and remote planet under the Azure Cloud County. The power and influence of a king was evident. Logically speaking, any king could easily suppress the 3 perfected immortals. However, the horned dragon before them had never used any of the means of a king. It had only used its powerful physical body to fight the 3 perfected immortals. The 3 perfected immortals had the same confusion. It was also because of this that they did not retreat immediately. But now, the Moonlight Sword Immortal was almost torn apart by the horned dragon. Perfected Immortal Wufeng was also pale, and his golden armor was almost destroyed. Both of them had the intention to retreat. At this moment, the horned dragon broke free from the Moonlight Sword Immortal and Perfected Immortal Wufeng's entanglement. It let out a piercing roar in Mingyao's direction. Roar! The dragon's roar reverberated through the world. The entire abyss was collapsing continuously. The stone walls on both sides shattered, and countless rocks rolled down. Snap! Mingyao's expression changed. One of the strings of the pitch-black guqin in her hand suddenly snapped. A stream of blood splattered on the guqin. The snapped string almost chopped off Mingyao's 10 fingers. Mingyao's face paled. She was both shocked and furious. As one of the 4 fairies, a core disciple of the Flying Immortal sect, and the princess of the Great Jin Immortal Kingdom, she had a noble status, powerful strength, and countless followers. She had never suffered such a blow since she started cultivating. Even if there were prodigies who were slightly stronger than her, they would not be so overbearing and embarrass her. If Mengyao knew that the one controlling the horned dragon was actually a mere stage 6 mystic immortal, she would probably explode in anger. Su Zimo was not a person who would go easy on women. Moreover, although this fairy Mengyao before him had a devastatingly beautiful appearance and an otherworldly temperament, her essence was no different from the Moonlight Sword Immortal and true immortal Wu Feng. Just now, if he were to be outside, he would not be able to avoid being searched by fairy Mengyao. In the lower worlds, after Su Zimo stepped into the path of cultivation, he defeated all the powerful enemies of the same level and suppressed all the geniuses. He fought all the way and rose against the trend. He pacified the primordial races, killed the blood demon, and was conferred the title of Eternal Wu Huang. He had never suffered such humiliation before. I don't care if you're a true immortal or a fairy. Since you want to be above me, I'll overturn you. The wound that the Moonlight Sword Immortal had left on Su Zimo's Dao heart had already quietly healed. Seeing that the situation was not good, the Moonlight Sword Immortal decisively activated her secret technique. Her figure turned into a beam of sword light and soared into the sky, leaving the Dragon Abyss planet. True Immortal Edgeless and Dream Pearl simultaneously fled as well. The horned dragon roared and its gigantic body coiled upwards as it chased after them. The horned dragon caught up with the Moonlight Sword Immortal and the other 2 as soon as they left the Dragon Abyss planet. Boom, boom, boom. Su Zimo controlled the horned dragon and engaged in a huge battle with the 3 perfected immortals in the starry skies once more. At this moment, almost all the living beings on the Dragon Abyss planet were looking up at the battle in the starry skies with shocked expressions. What level of battle is this? By the looks of it, it should be a battle between heaven immortals. Many cultivators in Dragon Abyss City discussed. Impossible. A cultivator shook his head. Just now, you didn't see how many earth immortals and heaven immortals were scared out of their wits and fled. There's a high chance that the 4 of them are perfected immortal experts. Perfected immortals. Many cultivators were filled with emotions and envy. The city lord of Dragon Abyss City was only a level 9 mystic immortal. Perfected immortal experts were too far away from them. In Snow Wind Ridge, Duan Tianliang, Xia Qingying, Yu Hao, and the others were also watching this scene. Duan Tianliang grinned. If I could speak to such an expert, it would probably be enough for me to brag about for the rest of my life. Dragons don't live with snakes? Yu Hao shook his head. Moreover, in the eyes of these experts, we're not even snakes. We're just insignificant ants. In the starry skies, the blood of perfected immortals continued to splatter. The battle was nearing its end. Even the 3 perfected immortals were completely suppressed by the horned dragon. At the end of the battle, the 3 perfected immortals were severely injured. Helpless, the Moonlight Sword Immortal and the other 2 had no choice but to use their life-saving methods and flee in different directions. They were as pathetic as stray dogs. In the blink of an eye, only the horned dragon was left on this battlefield. Compared to the vast starry skies, this horned dragon that was hundreds of thousands of feet long still seemed extremely small. Su Zimo did not chase after it. The azure dragon in his consciousness was close to nothingness. Its energy was exhausted and it could not hold on any longer. Through the eyes of the horned dragon, Su Zimo looked at the mysterious and vast starry skies beside him. A trace of yearning and anticipation flashed across his heart. He did not know how long it would take before he could freely travel through the starry skies. By then, he would be able to head to the vast wilderness and meet Daiyu. Su Zimo looked at the starry skies beside him longingly. With a shift of his consciousness, the massive dragon body disappeared from the starry skies. When they reappeared, Su Zimo and the horned dragon were back in that strange space. After this battle, the azure dragon's aura was weak. It dragged Su Zimo's primordial spirit out of the horned dragon's consciousness and returned to the bronze square cauldron. The dragon eye on the bronze square cauldron's outer wall closed again. Su Zimo's primordial spirit also returned to Qinglian's true body. The green lotus of creation was indeed powerful. Even without Su Zimo's primordial spirit's control, Qinglian's true body did not stop the self-healing process. After this battle, the injuries of Qinglian's true body were much better. Su Zimo could now move freely. After pondering for a while, he left this place and went to the abyss to retrieve his storage pouch. He also collected the storage pouches of the fallen Earth Immortals and Sky Immortals. The abyss was empty and silent. Corpses were everywhere. It was a mess and there was no sign of life. Just now, the Earth Immortals and Sky Immortals had already fled. These experts fled in a hurry and did not dare to linger. They did not even clean up the battlefield and took the storage pouches of the fallen cultivators. This was a great bargain for Su Zimo. Not long after, Su Zimo patrolled the battlefield. He obtained 23 Sky Immortal storage pouches and more than 500 Earth Immortal storage pouches. Of course, these pouches had the imprints of the Earth Immortals and Sky Immortals' consciousness. He could not see what was inside. But no matter what, this trip to the abyss had been too rewarding. These storage pouches were secondary. The biggest improvement was the bronze square cauldron's transformation. After devouring the fiend god's soul-summoning banner, the bronze square cauldron was still repairing the cracks on the second wall. Once the second wall was repaired, he would be able to obtain more of the Prajna Sutra. Moreover, Su Zimo wanted to see if there were any other carvings on the second wall of the bronze square cauldron to confirm a guess in his heart. Thupin Chinese. Chapter 1891. When Su Zimo returned to the abyssal space, he was stunned. He looked at the scene before him with a shocked expression and remained silent for a long time. Initially, the gigantic corpse of the horned dragon in this space was undergoing a drastic change. Its golden scales fell off and shattered while its flesh withered rapidly and started rotting. Before long, the corpse of the horned dragon was riddled with holes and it no longer had the glory it had when it fought against the 3 perfected immortals just now. Heis! Su Zimo sighed gently and vaguely understood what happened. Even someone as strong as the horned dragon before him could not withstand the passage of time. Initially, the horned dragon was sealed under a rock in this space without seeing the light of day and nobody disturbed it. As such, its corpse was preserved perfectly. There were many ancient corpses piled up in the abyss. On the surface, they were preserved perfectly. However, the moment an external force touched them, the corpses would turn into dust and not even their storage bags would be left. Right now, the horned dragon Longli opened this space and fought against the three perfected immortals before expending its last bit of energy that was already quite rare. After about 2 hours, the only thing left of the horned dragon was a faint golden skeleton that spanned thousands of miles between heaven and earth. Su Zimo bowed to the corpse of the horned dragon. If not for the horned dragon, he would not have been able to defeat the three perfected immortals, and the scar on his Dao heart would not have healed in a short period of time. If not for this space, he would not even know if he would be alive or dead right now. After a moment of silence, Su Zimo suddenly recalled something. Since the horned dragon was so strong, it should have left behind many treasures. The space before him should have been created by the horned dragon. In other words, if the horned dragon left behind any treasures, there was a high chance that they were in this space. At that thought, Su Zimo was invigorated and explored the depths of the space. After walking for nearly half a day, a large golden palace appeared in front of them. It was grand and ancient. The palace buildings could not withstand the power of time and were in a dilapidated state, leaving only a pile of dilapidated walls. However, just as Su Zimo was about to enter the area to investigate, he felt a tremendous resistance ahead. No matter what methods he used, he could not take a single step forward. Even his divine sense was unable to detect it. Strange. Su Zimo looked pensive as he murmured, "Is there a cultivation restriction in this space?" He tried many more times to no avail before he gave up on the matter. Within his sea of consciousness, the bronze square cauldron was still refining and absorbing the energy within the fiend god's soul-summoning banner. After devouring the many shattered numinous treasures scattered in the abyss, the second wall of the cauldron was already half repaired. According to this trend, once the fiend god's soul-summoning banner was completely absorbed, it was extremely likely that the second wall of the cauldron would be completely healed. At the same time, on the second cauldron wall, there was also a trace of life fluctuation. This situation was somewhat similar to the first cauldron wall where the azure dragon had awakened. However, the auras of the two types of life forms were completely different. To be precise, the aura of life on the second cauldron wall carried a trace of unusual heat. Su Zimo was in no hurry to leave. In this space, there was also heaven and earth yuan qi, and it was not any weaker than the long yuan star. There was no danger in cultivating here. Not even the three true immortals had discovered the existence of this space. This was a perfect place for seclusion cultivation. Without hesitation, Su Zimo found a green rock and sat down cross-legged, consuming the essence formation elixir. As he cultivated, he waited for the bronze square cauldron. A year later, within his sea of consciousness, the bronze square cauldron vibrated gently. Su Zimo was jolted awake from his seclusion. Opening his eyes, he took out the bronze square cauldron and focused his attention. The second wall of the bronze square cauldron had been completely repaired. Indeed, there were mysterious Sanskrit words recorded on the inner wall that connected perfectly with the previous section of the Perfection of Nirvana Sutra. Su Zimo looked at the words on the inner wall. The Sanskrit words turned into beams of golden light that entered his glabella. Every single Sanskrit word of the Perfection of Nirvana Sutra contained endless principles and wisdom. Unknowingly, Su Zimo fell into a state of comprehension. By the time he woke up once more, another year had passed. Su Zimo heaved a long sigh of relief and lamented. He had once absorbed and refined a Suo Luo leaf. His comprehension was very high, and his attainments in Buddhism were extremely deep. Even so, he had only comprehended a small portion of the Sanskrit of the Prajna Nirvana Sutra in a year. He did not know the background of this Buddhist sutra either. Su Zimo shifted his gaze and looked at the outer wall of the bronze square cauldron. Indeed, there was a pattern carved on the repaired outer wall. The pattern was of a fiery red bird that burned with flames. It was similar to a divine phoenix. However, the aura it emitted was even more terrifying. If the first wall of the cauldron was carved with the azure dragon of the four sages, the fiery red bird on the second wall should be the vermilion bird of the four sages. All of a sudden, the vermilion bird on the wall of the cauldron opened its eyes and emitted two beams of fiery light that entered Su Zimo's eyes. Instantly, a secret skill appeared in Su Zimo's mind and he muttered instinctively, Nanming primordial fire. Those were the flames of the vermilion bird. They were even stronger than the flames of the divine phoenix or taboo phoenix. Although Su Zimo had inherited the dragon phoenix essence spirit, he had lost his dragon phoenix true body and bloodline. As such, he had lost his dragon phoenix flames. But now, he had obtained the Nanming primordial fire that was even more terrifying than the dragon phoenix flames. Su Zimo was delighted. He continued to cultivate in seclusion and consumed essence condensation elixirs to cultivate the perfection of Nirvana Sutra and the Nanming primordial fire's secret skill. Unknowingly, he had already cultivated for 20 years in the abyss. What was worth celebrating was that he had comprehended more than half of the perfection of Nirvana Sutra and successfully cultivated the Nanming primordial fire's secret skill. However, Su Zimo's cultivation realm improved slowly. Although the Qinglian true body was strong, the amount of heaven and earth essence qi required for it to grow was far more than the physiques of other cultivators. In the past 20 years, Su Zimo had consumed close to 200 essence condensation elixirs. However, his cultivation did not increase by much, as though he had encountered some sort of bottleneck. I'm only at level 6 mystic essence realm. There are still 3 more minor realms to break through to the earth essence realm. However, it seems like it's already out of reach. Su Zimo sighed internally. The joy of obtaining the ancient sutra and secret skill from repairing the bronze square tripod had been diluted significantly over the years. The Qinglian true body had brought Su Zimo too many benefits. However, at the same time, it was restricting his growth. The conditions for the Qinglian true body to grow were way too harsh. The amount of heaven and earth essence qi required was far beyond the imagination of ordinary people. Of course, if he continued cultivating and consuming essence condensation elixirs, Su Zimo still had a chance of breaking through to level 7 mystic essence realm. However, the time required for that could be hundreds or even thousands of years. To the cultivators of the Dragon Abyss planet, breaking through a minor realm in thousands of years was already considered a godly speed. However, it was difficult for Su Zimo to accept that. He wanted to raise his cultivation realm as soon as possible so that he could leave the Dragon Abyss planet and meet Daiyu as soon as possible. Chapter 1892. Frustrated, Su Zimo set aside his cultivation for the time being and recalled the scene of Horned Dragon fighting against the 3 perfected immortals. The Azure Dragon was the one in charge of that battle, and his essence spirit did not play much of a role. However, the feeling of being present was extremely rare. The many combat techniques displayed by the Azure Dragon and some physical killing techniques seemed to be imprinted in his mind and could not be erased. Of course, those Azure Dragon combat techniques could only be released with the body of a dragon. If Su Zimo wanted to release the Azure Dragon combat techniques using Qinglian's true body, he had to polish and deduce those techniques continuously to turn them into combat techniques that were suitable for Qinglian's true body. In the abyssal space, Su Zimo waved his arms at times, bent his fingers at other times and moved around at other times. He was in a mysterious state. Su Zimo had the comprehension, talent and ability. He possessed a dragon phoenix essence spirit to begin with and was no stranger to the body of dragons and their habits. He had once established the Wu Dao in the Dao inheritance ground of Tianhuang mainland as well. Those experiences were his most precious treasures. Su Zimo was immersed in his deduction and even forgot about the passage of time. A long time later, Su Zimo suddenly felt a wave of dizziness and snapped out of his deduction state with an enlightened expression. Unknowingly, a year had passed. Over the past year, Su Zimo's essence spirit was greatly depleted after deductions. Even with the nourishment of the Creation Lotus platform, his essence spirit could not withstand it and became extremely weak. He almost fainted. Of course, he had gained a lot from the deduction in the past year. Roar! Suddenly, Su Zimo opened his mouth and let out a dragon roar. The entire world trembled slightly and countless boulders in the surroundings could not withstand the dragon roar and shattered. Although his cultivation realm was still at level 6 mystic essence realm, The power contained within that dragon roar was even stronger and more imposing than the roar of the dragon phoenix earlier on. Su Zimo had fused the Azure Dragon and the Dragon Phoenix's force exertion techniques into his own body, finally evolving into this dragon roar mystic art. Of course, his gains over the past year were not limited to this. Su Zimo suddenly thought of Daiyu. Back then, the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness left behind by Daiyu must have been deduced countless times before it finally evolved into a cultivation technique that a mortal like him could cultivate. It was unknown how much effort and energy Daiyu had put into this. In the past year, Su Zimo had always been in a state of deduction. He did not cultivate, and his realm did not advance at all. He took out some essence condensation pills from his storage bag and prepared to continue cultivating in seclusion. When his divine sense swept through the storage bag, he suddenly saw dozens of elemental spirit stones in the corner. The yuan qi of heaven and earth contained in elemental holy rock was extremely pure and rich. The value of a single elemental spirit stone was even comparable to 10,000 essence condensing pills. It would be great if I could absorb the spiritual qi in the elemental holy stone. My cultivation would definitely advance by leaps and bounds. Su Zimo took out an elemental spirit stone and played with it casually while murmuring softly. Of course, he knew that mystic immortals could not absorb the yuan qi of heaven and earth within the elemental holy stone. Firstly, the mystic immortal realm was not high enough. Only earthly immortals could make use of elemental spirit stones to cultivate. Secondly, although the yuan qi within the elemental holy stone was pure, it was extremely violent as well. If a mystic immortal were to absorb the yuan qi of heaven and earth within, their flesh and meridians would not be able to withstand it and they would explode on the spot. Those thoughts flashed through Su Zimo's mind and he did not take them to heart. He had just consumed the essence condensation pill and started circulating the Wisdom Nirvana Sutra to cultivate. All of a sudden, Su Zimo shuddered and opened his eyes with a bewildered expression. Just as he was circulating the Prajna Nirvana Sutra, a slight change occurred. A wisp of pure and condensed yuan qi of heaven and earth surged into his body from the elemental spirit stone that was initially in his palm. Worried that it was a hallucination, Su Zimo channeled his cultivation technique once more. Indeed, the yuan qi within the elemental spirit stone was stirring. How could this be? Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. He was only at level 6 mystic essence realm. Under normal circumstances, there was no way he could absorb the yuan qi within the elemental spirit stone. All of a sudden, Su Zimo recalled something Daiyu said to him back in Tianhuang mainland. If a mystic essence realm cultivator wanted to absorb the energy within the elemental spirit stone, they would have to cultivate the taboo secret manuals of the upper world. Could it be that the Wisdom Nirvana Sutra in the ancient cauldron is one of the taboo secret manuals? Su Zimo opened his mouth slightly with a shocked expression. Back when he was in seclusion in the wilderness, he had tried to see if Qinglian's true body could absorb the yuan qi within the elemental spirit stone. However, there was no reaction. But now, his cultivation realm was the same as before. The reason why he could absorb the energy within the elemental spirit stone was because he had cultivated an additional section of the Wisdom Nirvana Sutra. As it turned out, that sutra was a taboo secret manual of the upper world. That would explain why the power of the Wisdom Nirvana Sutra could subdue yin and yang and allow the dragon phoenix and Qinglian's essence spirits to fuse together. According to Daiyu, the taboo secret manuals were on par with the legendary supreme divine powers. Su Zimo was delighted when he figured that out. If he could refine the elemental spirit stone to cultivate, he would definitely be able to break through his current bottleneck and his cultivation would soar as well. However, apart from his joy, he was also increasingly curious about the bronze square cauldron. What was the origin of that ancient cauldron? The outer walls were engraved with an azure dragon and vermilion bird while the inner walls were engraved with taboo secret manuals of the Buddhist sects. Su Zimo set aside his doubts for the time being and took a deep breath of air. Gripping an elemental spirit stone in his palm, he channeled the Wisdom Nirvana Sutra with all his might. Wisps of pure and violent heaven-earth yuan qi surged into Su Zimo's body through his palm, rushing towards his organs and meridians. Bang! Su Zimo's body shuddered and cracks appeared on the surface of Qinglian's true body as she burst into a mist of blood. That power was way too terrifying. The wisps of heaven-earth Yuan Qi seemed to have stirred up a shocking storm within Su Zimo's body that engulfed his entire body and destroyed all life force. Thankfully, Su Zimo was Qinglian's true body. If it was any other body, it would not have been able to withstand that power and would have exploded by now. Actually, Su Zimo did not know that. Even if some peerless experts of the upper world possessed taboo cultivation techniques to nurture legacy disciples, they would not dare to let them absorb elemental spirit stones to cultivate at level 6 mystic essence realm. That was way too risky and almost no one could endure it. Those legacy disciples would have countless treasures, elixirs and immortal herbs to temper their tendons and bones, temper their bodies and cleanse their meridians and marrows. Usually, when one was at level 9 mystic essence realm and was about to break through, they would use elemental spirit stones to cultivate under the supervision of the sect elders and break through to earth essence realm in one go. Su Zimo's brows were tightly knitted together. His expression was pained as his body trembled slightly. The Yuan Qi from the elemental spirit stones surged into his body and caused great damage to Qinglian's true body. But at the same time, Qinglian's true body's powerful self-healing ability was constantly healing the wounds in her body. Between the repeated destruction and healing, Qinglian's true body's absorption and refinement of the Yuan Qi from the elemental spirit stone had reached a near-perfect effect. Qinglian's true body was rapidly growing. Su Zimo's cultivation realm was also steadily increasing. Chapter 1893. Time flew by, and 30 years had already passed since the incident on the Dragon Abyss planet. That incident could be said to be an unprecedented event on the Dragon Abyss planet, and all the living beings on the planet were trembling in fear. The incident in the Abyss first attracted many earthly immortals, and then heavenly immortals appeared. In the end, there was actually a legendary true immortal realm expert that descended, and even provoked a divine dragon that was completely golden in color and was 30,000 meters long. That great battle in the starry sky brought too much shock to the living beings on the Dragon Abyss planet, and it was unforgettable for them. This great battle also brought about a great impact on the Dragon Abyss planet. On the Dragon Abyss planet, there were many mysterious immortals that had fallen in the abyss. It was said that there was even a commander of the Dragon Abyss city that had fallen in the abyss. Until now, that abyss had always been the forbidden area of the Dragon Abyss city, and no living beings dared to step into it. After the great battle ended, many earthly immortals and heavenly immortals had already dispersed. But the cultivators and living beings on the Dragon Abyss city did not dare to act rashly. No matter if it was the 8 great powers or the 4 great bandits, practically all of them chose to lay low and not make a move, as they were afraid of attracting a calamity. Until 30 years had passed, and no more earthly immortals and heavenly immortals appeared, the Dragon Abyss planet gradually returned to normal. Many battles and killings between cultivators were staged once again, and some powers started to become restless. In a mountain range, ancient trees stood in great numbers, and they were verdant and lush. Under the cover of the night, the mountain forest flickered with rays of dark green light, and it was extremely horrifying, and the air was suffused with a murderous aura. "Feng Yan, why did you ask me to come here?" A voice suddenly sounded out, and it came down from the sky. On the branch at the top of the ancient tree stood a figure, and his entire body seemed to be glued to the branch as it swayed up and down. In the darkness of the depths of the dense forest, an enormous figure gradually walked out, and it was actually a black-scaled fiend wolf that was dozens of meters tall. On the back of this black-scaled fiend wolf sat a cultivator, and it was precisely the great leader of the wolf army with the Taoist name Feng Yan. "Sangya, 40 years ago, Zhuyangu was annihilated. Have you forgotten about this matter?" Feng Yan asked. Sangya was the Taoist name of the Goshawk gang leader. Hee. Sangya stood at the top of the ancient tree and chuckled. "You've been very close to Zhuyangu all these years, cooperating with them. My Goshawk gang has nothing to do with Zhuyangu." Feng Yan said, "That's right. However, Don't forget that you and I contributed a lot to the destruction of the Sky Pillar Stronghold, the Wind Cloud Gang, and the Righteous Village. And now, the Overlord of Snow Wind Ridge is a remnant of the three great factions from back then. Songya was silent. Feng Yan continued, now, Feng Shuling has devoured Ziyanggu after destroying it. His strength and reputation are rising continuously. If Wind Snow Ridge truly matures, do you think those remnants of the past will let you and me go? Oomph. Songya coldly snorted and said, the reason why Wind Snow Ridge can have its current reputation is because of that Su Zimo who appeared out of nowhere. Now, Su Zimo has already fallen in that abyss for 30 years. A mere Wind Snow Ridge is nothing. Feng Yan said, in my opinion, it's better to eliminate Wind Snow Ridge as soon as possible so as to avoid nurturing a tiger. Moreover, Wind Snow Ridge has already destroyed Ziyanggu, so who knows how many cultivation resources they've accumulated in their territory. After destroying Wind Snow Ridge, we'll divide the cultivation resources equally. It'll be enough for our two armies to cultivate for many years, and our strength will rise greatly. Another person walked out from the dense forest and said in a deep voice, as long as our two armies join forces, we'll definitely be able to flatten Wind Snow Ridge. The person who spoke was the second head of the Wolf Army. You've already cultivated to the 8th level of the Mystic Origin stage. Songya's divine sense swept over the second head and was slightly surprised. You have a good eye, Overlord Songya. The second head smiled and said, not to mention that Su Zimo has already fallen. Even if he's still alive, with the help of your Deputy Overlord, the four of us Stage 8 Mystic Immortals can still kill him. Songya curled his lips and said in a certain tone, even earthly immortals and sky immortals couldn't escape from that unforeseen event 30 years ago. He's only a Stage 6 Mystic Immortal, so he'll definitely die in that abyss. If he's still alive, then it'll be a miracle. Feng Yan asked, does that mean Brother Songya agrees? Songya pondered for a moment and nodded. No problem. 10 days later, our two armies will gather and flatten Wind Snow Ridge. Great! Feng Yan laughed loudly. Wind Snow Ridge. 30 years had passed in the blink of an eye for the cultivators of the upper realm. In these years, although the number of people in Wind Snow Ridge had been increasing and their strength had been increasing steadily, there was no obvious change in the cultivation of the people in Wind Snow Ridge. The Lord of Wind Snow Ridge, Yu Hao, was still a Stage 7 Mystic Immortal. The biggest change was that Yu Hao and Xia Qingying were already married and had become Dao companions. After the destruction of Ziyanggu 40 years ago, the two of them had already developed feelings for each other and had a good impression of each other. Now that they had become Dao companions, it could be said that the conditions were right. Outside the main hall, the wind and snow whistled, and it was a vast expanse. Yu Hao's expression was calm as he stood at the door and looked at the wind and snow outside. He was silent and there was a faint trace of worry between his brows. Light footsteps came from behind him. Husband, what are you worried about? Xia Qingying could tell that Yu Hao had something on his mind. She came to his side and asked gently. Yu Hao turned his head and smiled at Xia Qingying but didn't say anything. Are you worried about fellow Daoist Su? Xia Qingying asked again and then sighed softly. Sigh, there's been no news of fellow Daoist Su for so many years. I'm afraid he's already dead. Brother Su is my savior. Back then, I didn't stop him and let him face danger alone. Yu Hao lowered his head slightly and blamed himself. This matter isn't your fault. With fellow Daoist Su's character and methods, if he really wanted to go, none of us could stop him. Xia Qingying consoled. Yu Hao said, although Snow Wind Ridge has been developing steadily and its strength has been increasing continuously, there's always been a huge hidden danger. Snow Wind Ridge was able to gain a foothold on Dragon Abyss Star and destroy Ziyanggu for 10 years. It's all because of Brother Su's ferocious reputation. Now, we don't know whether Brother Su is dead or alive. Snow Wind Ridge lacks a top expert like a rank 8 Mystic Immortal. I'm afraid a calamity is about to descend. Xia Qingying smiled and said, Snow Wind Ridge has you. Cultivate as soon as possible and strive to break through to the 8th level of the Mystic Origin realm as soon as possible. Yu Hao shook his head and said, with my current cultivation, it'll take at least 1,000 years to reach the 8th level of the mystic immortal realm if I have sufficient resources. I'm worried that Snow Wind Ridge won't be able to hold on until then. How can that be? Xia Qingying smiled and said, we've just been rebuilt a few decades ago and don't have any deep hatred with the various large forces. I believe that they won't attack Snow Wind Ridge for no reason. Yu Hao looked into the distance and said softly, I'm not worried about the various large forces, but the two bands of bandits. Chapter 1894. It was late at night in Snow Wind Ridge. Most of the spirit farmers were already resting. 10 patrol squads patrolled the surroundings of Snow Wind Ridge continuously, guarding the land. Brother Han, what's up with the territorial lord recently? Why did he send so many people to patrol? That's right. Previously, there were at most 3 squads patrolling at night. Now that there are 10 squads, it's making everyone nervous. Something might be going on, the cultivator with the surname Han said in a deep voice. I heard that Commander Xin Fei will lead hundreds of people to patrol the area 5 kilometers away every night. Is it that serious? I think you're worrying for nothing, another cultivator chuckled. Bandits? Enemy attack? Suddenly, a sharp and hurried shout traveled into Snow Wind Ridge. Immediately after, a gigantic flame burst into the skies and exploded in midair, piercing through the dark night. That was a warning signal from Snow Wind Ridge. The 10 patrolling cultivators turned pale with fright. One had to know that this warning signal would never be released unless it was absolutely necessary. It was a notification that a strong enemy was attacking. Hurry, hurry and inform everyone. The cultivator with the surname Han was decisive and ordered immediately. Almost at the same time, flames lit up in the initially pitch-black Snow Wind Ridge and countless cultivators were jolted awake. Instantly, Snow Wind Ridge became extremely noisy. Yu Hao's figure appeared in midair in a flash. Standing in midair consumed a lot of essence qi as a mystic immortal. However, Yu Hao could not care less and said in a deep voice, everyone, don't panic. Listen to my orders and gather in the main hall. Take out your dermic treasures and prepare to face the enemy. At the same time, Yu Hao took out 7 talismans from his storage bag and injected essence qi to release them. The 7 talismans turned into streams of light and split into 7 different directions, disappearing into the night. For the past few days, Yu Hao had an ominous feeling in his heart, as though he was on a whim. That was the reason why Yu Hao appeared right away when Xin Fei sent out the warning signal and sent out a message talisman. This might be the only hope for Snow Wind Ridge. Wenjun, come with me to support Xin Fei. Yu Hao turned to look at Gu Wenjun who was speeding over not far away. All right. Gu Wenjun nodded without hesitation. Husband, I'll go with you. Xia Qingying also rushed over and said hurriedly. Yu Hao shook his head and said, if you stay here, Wind Snow Ridge will need someone to take charge of the overall situation. Pausing for a moment, Yu Hao thought for a moment before saying, if we don't make it back, don't hesitate, immediately, I will definitely wait for your return. Xia Qingying interrupted Yu Hao and said firmly. Yu Hao reached out and caressed Xia Qingying's face, his eyes full of reluctance and love. Then, Yu Hao took a deep breath, steeled his heart, and left. Gu Wenjun followed closely behind. The two rode their beasts and arrived at the entrance of Snow Wind Ridge. A huge figure stood up from the side and reached out its hand to lift the two of them up. A 7th-level Mystic Origins stage silver giant. Let me. The silver giant said 2 words and put Yu Hao and Gu Wenjun on its shoulders. It strode towards the direction of the signal. With a single step, the silver giant covered dozens of feet. It was much faster than the demon beasts they were riding. Before they walked far, Yu Hao felt a series of intense tremors on the ground. A woo! A series of terrifying wolf howls sounded from afar. It's the wolf army, Gu Wenjun said hatefully. The wolf army was also one of the culprits behind the destruction of the 3 factions back then. It's fine if it's just the wolf army. Yu Hao looked at the distant horizon and murmured softly without finishing his sentence. Before long, pairs of dark green eyes appeared in the dark night ahead. They were densely packed and a ferocious aura surged over. Even in the dark night, billowing smoke could still be seen. There were at least tens of thousands of soldiers. Although the silver giant had an extraordinary bloodline and strong combat strength, he still felt his heart palpitate against such an apocalyptic army. Under such a torrent, even if he was a giant, he would still be trampled to the point where not even his bones would remain. At the front of the torrent, there were dozens of figures running wildly, as though they would be drowned by the torrent behind them at any moment. The person in the lead was Shen Fei. "Second brother, I'm here." Yu Hao roared and leaped up. He withdrew his gigantic axe from his storage bag and charged forward. Gu Wenjun's face was slightly pale, but she still mustered her courage and charged forward. "First, retreat. Don't bother about me," Shen Fei screamed. In just a short while, a few more figures were caught up by the army behind and drowned by the sharp claws of the black-scaled fiend wolves. Yu Hao did not hesitate. If he did not advance, Shen Fei would definitely die before he could escape to Snow Wind Ridge. Boom! Yu Hao wielded his gigantic axe and descended from the sky. He flew over Shen Fei's head and slashed down viciously at the army ahead. If it was a one-on-one battle, it would be difficult for a Class 7 Mystic Immortal to withstand the strength and aura that Yu Hao released. However, the moment Yu Hao's gigantic axe descended, at least hundreds of Dharma treasures attacked. Yu Hao's body shuddered and he was instantly sent flying by the tremendous force. His palm was torn and he almost lost his grip on his gigantic axe. This torrent did not show any signs of stopping as it continued to surge forward. Gu Wenjun's attack was also drowned in the torrent and did not cause any waves. Bang, bang, bang. Just as Yu Hao's group was about to be engulfed by the wolf army, a gigantic figure charged over. Its entire body flickered with silver light as it roared repeatedly. The silver giant attacked. The cultivators of the wolf army at the front were knocked off their feet by the silver giant. Even the black-scaled fiend wolves could not withstand the powerful strength of the silver giant. A trace of chaos appeared at the front of the army. "Let's go together." Yu Hao obtained a chance to catch his breath and roared at the silver giant. He knew in his heart that with the few of them, it was like a mantis trying to stop a chariot against the army in front of them. The silver giant waved his fists in the wolf army and fought in all directions. At first, he charged into the army and killed many of the wolf army, causing some chaos. But in the blink of an eye, even more evil wolf army, even more powerful evil wolf army, attacked. In a few breaths' time, the silver giant's body was already covered in injuries. The silver giant roared again and rushed out before he was completely surrounded. He grabbed Yu Hao and the other two with his bloody hands and fled towards Snow Wind Ridge. The silver giant's body was dripping with blood. The silver blood left a clear trail behind him. It shone brightly and was extremely conspicuous in the night. The silver giant gritted his teeth and endured the pain. He took large strides and ran away like a madman. The flames of Snow Wind Ridge were right ahead. Right at this moment, a cold voice sounded. "Let's see where you can escape to." Chapter 1895. The leader of the wolf army, Feng Yan, had a mocking expression as he rode on the tallest black-scaled fiend wolf. With a leap, he charged to the front of the army. The black-scaled fiend wolf was almost comparable to the silver giant. That was the wolf king of the black-scaled fiend wolf race. If the silver giant was in good condition, the wolf king might not be able to catch up to him. But now, the silver giant was covered in injuries and limped. Before long, the wolf king caught up to him. Groar! The wolf king howled and pounced forward with a murderous aura, biting down viciously at the silver giant's neck. Sensing the evil wind behind him, the silver giant did not even turn back and punched back at the wolf king. Bang! The silver giant's fist was like a gigantic hammer as it smashed onto the wolf king's head with a dull thud. If that strike landed on the head of any other demon beast, their brains would definitely be smashed and they would die on the spot. The skulls of the wolf race were the toughest. The black-scaled fiend wolf had a layer of black scales on its head that was even more indestructible. The silver giant's fist merely caused the black-scaled fiend wolf to feel dizzy, but it was not injured. "Beast, you must have a death wish." Feng Yan's expression darkened on the Wolf King's back as he swung the saber in his hands and slashed forward. The saber beam was chilling as it tore through the void and descended instantly. Yu Hao, Shen Fei and Gu Wenjun attacked at the same time and summoned their Dharma treasures. However, they were all sent flying by Feng Yan's saber beam. Although they were only a single cultivation realm apart, the difference in strength between the two sides was immense. "Watch out!" Yu Hao exclaimed, but it was too late. The saber beam broke through the Dharma treasures of the three of them and paused for a moment before landing on the broad back of the silver giant. Shing! Fresh blood splattered and silver light shone. A gigantic wound that was so deep that one could see the bones appeared on the silver giant's back. It stretched from his left shoulder to his right waist and was a shocking sight. He was almost sliced into two. The silver giant swayed and his legs went weak as he almost knelt on the ground. Blood spewed out from the wound on his back and splattered onto the Wolf King and Feng Yan's faces, causing the man and wolf to pause for a moment. The silver giant cried out in pain and seized the opportunity to continue sprinting forward with the three of them on his back. Snow Ridge was right ahead. Screech! Suddenly, in the air, a sharp and ear-piercing cry suddenly rang out. Immediately after, a large shadow shrouded the area, covering the starlight and surging killing intent. Yu Hao and the other two subconsciously looked up. In midair, a gigantic goshawk flapped its wings and swooped down, pouncing towards the silver giant on the ground. On the neck of the goshawk sat a figure. It was the leader of the goshawk gang, Sangya. "You bastards should have died long ago." Sangya sneered. The goshawk's gaze was sharp and shone with a cold glint. A pair of malevolent and sharp claws extended from its abdomen with protruding joints, grabbing towards the silver giant with great strength. "You guys go first." Yu Hao took a deep breath and leaped down from the silver giant. He activated his Yuan Shin, condensed a minor divine ability and pointed at the goshawk. "Freeze." Lesser divine ability, body securing technique. "Petty tricks." Sangya sneered. He waved his sleeve and a gust of wind was created. His spiritual energy filled the air. Lesser ability, imperial wind technique. The moment the body securing technique descended, it was dissipated by the gust of wind and did not affect the goshawk at all. The goshawk was extremely fast and its sharp claws were like lightning as it swiped down at Yu Hao. Exclamation point. Yu Hao tried his best to dodge, but his abdomen was still pierced by a sharp claw. Instantly, fresh blood spewed out. "Husband!" A heart-wrenching cry sounded from the direction of Snow Wind Ridge. Yu Hao tried his best to look back and used all his strength to shout, "Don't bother about me. Activate the formation." Formation? In midair, Sangyo was slightly stunned. Right then, a gigantic palm reached over and forcefully rescued Yu Hao from the claws of the goshawk. His left shoulder was crushed by the goshawk's sharp claws as well. The silver giant protected Yu Hao and the other two as it stumbled and continued sprinting towards Snow Wind Ridge. Finally, the silver giant protected Yu Hao and the other two as they returned to Snow Wind Ridge and collapsed in a pool of blood. Behind them was the army of the ferocious wolf army and goshawk sect. They were dense like locusts and swarmed over with a torrential aura. There were a total of 100,000 people in the army. There were also hundreds of goshawks circling in midair. This was the special army of goshawk sect. Although there were only a few hundred of them, they were almost invincible in midair after subduing the goshawks and looking down from above. The many cultivators of Snow Wind Ridge were ashen when they saw that. Over the years, although Snow Wind Ridge had developed very quickly, the number of guards in the territory was less than 20,000. The guards of Snow Wind Ridge could not defend against the 100,000-strong army of the two bandits. In fact, some of the guards of Snow Wind Ridge stood out in fear and fled outside, begging for mercy. "Are you guys stupid?" Duan Tenliang could not help but curse. "Those bandits are murderous bandits. If you beg for mercy now, you'll definitely die." His words were drowned out by the clamor of the 100,000-strong army. Not many people could remain calm and rational in the face of a calamity. "Missy, you've got to stop them. Otherwise, the morale of the army will be in chaos and they might collapse without a fight." A cultivator could not help but say, "Don't stop them." Xia Qingying said coldly as she looked at the fleeing Snow Wind Ridge cultivators who were begging for mercy. Just as Duan Tianliang said, the fleeing Snow Wind Ridge cultivators were the fastest to die. The 100,000-strong army of Wolf Sect and Goshawk Sect completely ignored those people and trampled over them, turning them into meat paste. When the Silver Giant, Yu Hao, and the others returned to Snow Wind Ridge, Xia Qingying pursed her lips tightly and formed hand seals continuously. Streams of essence qi burst forth from her fingertips and entered the ground. "Activate!" Xia Qingying shouted softly. A mysterious light suddenly lit up in the area, forming a sparkling barrier at the periphery of Snow Wind Ridge. The barrier separated Snow Wind Ridge and the 100,000-strong army outside. The 100,000-strong army of Wolf Sect and Goshawk Sect was aggressive and could not stop their momentum at all. Even if there was a mountain of swords and a sea of flames in front of them, they could still charge through, let alone a barrier. Boom, boom, boom. The 100,000-strong army crashed over fiercely and a series of deafening sounds could be heard. Wave-like ripples appeared on the barrier as it vibrated continuously. Many Snow Wind Ridge cultivators turned pale with fright. However, everyone was shocked to discover that not a single cultivator of the 100,000-strong army of Wolf Sect and Goshawk Sect could break through the barrier. Outside the barrier, countless cultivators fell to the ground and were trampled by the army behind them. The army at the front could not charge in. The army at the back did not know what was going on and continued charging. The 100,000-strong army fell into chaos. With just this one attack, many cultivators of the Wolf and Goshawk had died under the trampling of their own army. Even the leader of Wolf Sect, Feng Yan, was almost drowned and trampled into meat paste by the 100,000-strong army behind him. Chapter 1896. Feng Yan rode on the Wolf King and broke free from the chaotic army. He was also in a wretched state with a terrible expression. Screech! A series of ear-piercing screeches could be heard in midair. Hundreds of goshawks swooped down one after another, pouncing towards the cultivators below Snow Wind Ridge. However, the barrier outside Snow Wind Ridge did not only defend against the 100,000-strong army at the front, there was even a dome of light above Snow Wind Ridge. When the goshawks collided against the dome, they merely caused ripples on the barrier and could not charge in at all. On the contrary, the goshawks were dizzy from the collision. Some of the goshawks fell and were drowned by the 100,000-strong army before they could soar into the air, dying on the spot. The cultivators in Snow Wind Ridge were all pale. Some of the cultivators were completely close to the 100,000-strong army of wolves and goshawks and were pale with fright. There was only an additional barrier as thin as a cicada's wing between the two parties. However, it was this barrier that blocked the entire 100,000-strong army. Haha! Duan Tianliang could not help but laugh out loud. Everyone, don't panic. This is a backup plan left behind by Boss Su to deal with these bandits. Xia Qingying heaved a sigh of relief as well with lingering fear in her heart. After destroying Zuyanggu, Su Zimo cultivated while comprehending a type of array formation. Su Zimo only managed to set up the array formation around Snow Wind Ridge after 10 years. Thereafter, Su Zimo imparted the array formation to Yu Hao and Xia Qingying. However, the two of them did not have deep attainments in the Tao of array formations. The two of them had only learned the dermic art to activate the array formation when a change occurred in the abyss of Dragon Abyss Planet. Su Zimo left. In fact, before this, even Yu Hao and Xia Qingying did not know how powerful the array formation was. To think that the array formation could block the 100,000-strong army outside. Of course, it was also fortunate that Yu Hao sensed something in advance and strengthened the defenses, even sending Shen Fei to patrol 5 kilometers away. If not for Shen Fei's warning, Snow Wind Ridge would have suffered heavy losses even with the array formation when the 100,000-strong army surged over in this dark night. Thinking of this, Xia Qingying was shocked and hurriedly ran towards Yu Hao and the others. Yu Hao was half lying in Shen Fei's arms. His face was pale and he frowned. There was a huge bloody hole in his abdomen and blood was still flowing out. "Husband, how are you?" Seeing Yu Hao like this, Xia Qingying's eyes instantly turned red and tears fell. Don't worry, I won't die. Yu Hao grinned, forcing a smile. The silver giant next to him was sprawled on the ground. There was a hideous wound on its back, and its flesh was exposed. It was a ghastly sight. Gu Wenjun was slowly applying medicine to the silver giant's wounds. Just now, if not for the silver giant, Yu Hao and the other two would most likely perish. Outside the array, the army of 100,000 was in chaos, trampling each other and causing many casualties. Song Ye's eyes darkened. Feng Yan was also enraged. He could not help but let out a long roar. Listen to my command, all of you stop. This voice drowned out the clamor of the 100,000 soldiers. The cultivators of the wolf and goshawk army gradually calmed down and began to retreat, regrouping and reorganizing their formation. To think that there would be an immortal array in Snow Wind Ridge. Song Ye murmured softly, feeling troubled. Ascended cultivators who were proficient in array formations were extremely rare to begin with. Even for formation grandmasters of the lower world, it was difficult for them to come into contact with immortal arrays in the upper world. Feng Yan raised his voice. Is there anyone who is proficient in immortal arrays? Step forward. A moment later, a skinny old man at level 3 Mystic Essence Realm stood forward hesitantly. Leader, I know a little about array formations. However, I don't know much about immortal arrays and I don't know if I can dispel this immortal array. The skinny old man chuckled dryly. It's fine. Feng Yan waved his hand and said in a deep voice, as long as you can dispel this array, I'll give you a huge reward for your contributions today. All right, I'll do my best. The skinny old man was invigorated. Feng Yan said in a deep voice, Wolf Army, listen up. Everyone, disperse and surround Snow Wind Ridge. Not a single ant is allowed to leave. Song Ye nodded slowly as well. Brothers of the Goshawk sect, do the same. Once the array is dispelled, I'll bathe Snow Wind Ridge in blood and kill everyone. Kill! 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 The bandits were excited and ferocious as they roared loudly. The 100,000-strong army moved and quickly surrounded Snow Wind Ridge layer by layer, leaving no room for escape. Many cultivators in Wind Snow Ridge were scared witless. If the immortal array was dispelled, they would not even have a way out. Through the barrier, a skinny old man from the wolf army could be seen patrolling the surroundings of the array. He would squat down at times and stop at times to ponder with a frown. 2 hours. 4 hours. In the blink of an eye, half a day passed. The wolf army was getting impatient while the people of Snow Wind Ridge were even more nervous, afraid that the skinny old man would dispel the immortal array. One had to know that Xia Qingying and Yu Hao only knew how to activate the array and did not know anything else. Facing such a scene, the people of Snow Wind Ridge could only wait silently. After a whole day, the skinny old man was sweating profusely and was still pacing outside the immortal array. There was no change in the immortal array. The impatience on Feng Yan and Song Ye's faces grew heavier. Finally, Feng Yan could not wait any longer and asked slowly, Can you do it or not? How long do you need to dispel this immortal array? I'm not sure either. The skinny old man was sweating profusely as he said with a trembling voice, This immortal array is too complicated. I haven't found the eye of the array. That means you can't dispel this immortal array? Feng Yan's expression turned cold as he interrupted him with a sinister tone. Yes, definitely. The skinny old man was so frightened that he trembled and could only agree. Feng Yan said expressionlessly, Give me a time limit. The skinny old man swallowed his saliva and said tentatively, 1 year. The moment he said that word, he felt a chill run down his spine. The skinny old man glanced at Feng Yan and saw that the latter's face was filled with murderous intent. He quickly changed his words and said, half a year. Damn it, even half a year can't do it. Feng Yan could no longer hold it in. He cursed and attacked, the long saber in his hands slashing forward. The saber light descended and sliced the skinny old man into two. Blood and organs splattered all over the ground. Feng Yan and Song Ye were filled with murderous intent. How could they endure for another half a year? Haha. Duan Tianliang could not help but laugh out loud. He mocked, "You need half a year to dispel this immortal array? What a joke! Don't be so smug." Feng Yan stared at the laughing Duan Tianliang and said coldly, "When I dispel this immortal array, the first one I'll kill will be you. Wolf Army, Goshawk Gang, listen up. Take turns attacking day and night." Feng Yan and Sangya ordered at the same time. Feng Yan looked at the people of Snowwind Ridge with murderous intent and said sinisterly, "I want to see how long this immortal array can last." Chapter 1897. Profound Een Mountain, Conference Hall. A middle-aged man sat in the middle with a gloomy expression. He had a mustache above his lips that looked like two eyebrows. This person was the Lord of Profound Een Mountain, Ding Yi, a rank 8 mystic immortal. On the two sides of the hall sat the various commanders of Profound Een Mountain. Almost all of them were rank 7 mystic immortals. On Ding Ye's left and right sat two protectors. They were both rank 8 mystic immortals. The left protector saw that everyone was present, then he stood up and cupped his fists. "Lord, did something happen for you to call us here today?" Ding Yi waved a talisman between his fingers and said, "The Wolf Army and the Goshawk Gang are attacking Snowwind Ridge. I just received a letter asking for help from Snowwind Ridge. What do you think?" When this news spread, the hall quickly fell into discussion. After Snowwind Ridge destroyed Xianggu, their rise in recent years has been extremely fast. I didn't expect that they would be targeted by two great bandits. Snowwind Ridge's reputation before was only because of Su Zimo. Now that this person has fallen, Snowwind Ridge is simply not worthy of being on the same level as our great forces. When he heard the name Su Zimo, a wisp of hatred flashed past Ding Ye's eyes. His son, Ding Yu, was killed by Su Zimo on Dragon Abyss Planet. The right protector said in a deep voice, "Lord, we don't need to incur the enmity of two great bandits because of Snowwind Ridge." "That's right." The left protector nodded in agreement. "We don't have any relationship with Snowwind Ridge. There's no need to get involved in this." Ding Yi nodded and said, "However, we can go and watch the show." Left protector, "Stay behind and guard." Right protector, "Take 500 men and follow me to Snowwind Ridge to take a look." Twin Dragon Sect. Two men stood side by side at the entrance of the main hall. Both of them had tall and straight figures, and their auras were extraordinary. The man on the right had his hair scattered casually and a sheathed long saber tied to his back. He had an unruly expression. He was one of the sect masters of Twin Dragon Sect, Ko Yong. The man on the left had a handsome appearance. His black hair was tied up and hung on his back. His hands were behind his back, and he emitted a tranquil and aloof aura. He was the other sect master and Su Wan's father, Su Jian. "Father, Uncle Ko." Su Wan pursed her lips and said, "Although Su Zimo is dead, I still have some friendship with you Hao and the others from Wind Snow Ridge. I want to save them." Su Jian remained silent. Su Wan sighed inwardly. She knew very well that the Twin Dragon Sect had no need to save Feng Shuling. This was an unwise move. Not to mention whether or not they could save Feng Shuling. If the Twin Dragon Sect took action, they would definitely offend the Vicious Wolf Army and the Goshawk Gang, two great bandits. In the future, the Twin Dragon Sect might very well be targeted by the two great bandits and never have a day of peace. Ko Yong suddenly turned his head and looked at Su Jian. He raised his eyebrows and asked, "What do you think?" "My thoughts are the same as yours." Su Jian smiled. "Ha." Ko Yong laughed heartily. "In this lifetime, we are brothers. You are still the one who understands me best." Su Wan was confused. She couldn't help but ask, "Father, Uncle Ko, have you made a decision?" "Of course." Ko Zhong patted the saber on his back, his heroic spirit soared to the sky as he said, "Get ready, let's set out together to meet this group of roving bandits." "Father, why are you guys?" Su Wan was still in disbelief. Su Jian said with a smile, "The four great bandits have been harming Dragon Abyss Planet for many years. However, their whereabouts are unpredictable and they come and go like the wind. It's very difficult to eliminate them. Now, This is a rare opportunity for two great bandits to gather. Even without feng shuiling, we have to fight a bloody battle with these bandits. Apart from Mystic Een Mountain and the Twin Dragon sect, the other 5 factions had also received feng shuiling's request for help. However, apart from the Twin Dragon sect, the other factions did not make much of a move. Dragon Abyss Planet, the end of the abyss. The moment the two great bandits attacked feng shuiling's immortal formation, Su Zimo, who was cultivating in seclusion in this mysterious space, had already woken up. Su Zimo had left a strand of his divine sense on the immortal formation. As long as the immortal formation was activated, he would sense it. Standing up, Su Zimo's expression was cold and his gaze was like lightning. Something had happened to feng shuiling. Before he left, he had instructed Yu Hao and Xia Qingying not to activate this immortal formation unless it was absolutely necessary. This was because the immortal formation required spirit elemental stones to operate. Once the spirit elemental stones were exhausted, this immortal formation would also lose its effect. Su Zimo prepared to rush back immediately. If the immortal formation operated normally, the energy in the spirit elemental stones in the formation core would be enough to support it for decades. However, if there were external forces attacking continuously, the consumption of the spirit elemental stones would also become extremely intense, and it might not be able to support it for long. All these years, Su Zimo had consumed the core condensation pill and cultivated with the spirit elemental stones, and his cultivation had increased rapidly. If he cultivated normally, it would take him hundreds or even thousands of years to break through to Mystic Origin Stage 7, even if it was Qinglian's true body. However, he had already broken through 3 years ago and cultivated to Mystic Origin Stage 7. Moreover, his soul core had even attained the terrifying 9th level of the Profound Origin realm. He had only used less than 30 years for this process. Of course, in these 30 years, the dozens of spirit elemental stones in his storage bag had also been used up. Su Zimo turned around and looked at the dilapidated palace in the distance, then turned around and walked out. After passing through a barrier that looked like a water curtain, he returned to the abyss once again. Su Zimo looked around and prepared to use his extreme speed ability to rush to Snow Wind Ridge as soon as possible. Suddenly, Su Zimo frowned and felt that something was wrong around him. In the abyss, there were various Earth Immortal and Sky Immortal corpses strewn everywhere. And these corpses seemed to have been touched by someone. Although Su Zimo was cultivating in seclusion in the mysterious space, he could still sense what was going on outside. And this person had managed to hide from his senses. This was an expert who was far stronger than him. Even until now, Su Zimo's spiritual perception had not sensed anything strange. However, he knew that this person was most likely nearby. "Come out," Su Zimo said slowly with a serious expression. "Hee." A seductive laugh came from behind, causing one's heart to skip a beat. Su Zimo turned around. Not far away, there was a charming and seductive woman. She blinked her watery eyes and looked at him with a smile. "Sky Immortal Expert, Meiji. You're really amazing. How did you discover me?" Meiji asked curiously. "You haven't left yet?" Su Zimo frowned and asked in an unfriendly tone. He did not expect that Meiji had been guarding this place for 30 years without leaving. Meiji was not annoyed and said with a smile, "After the battle ended, I was still unwilling to accept it and turn back. In the end, I realized that a corpse was missing." At that point, Meiji glared at Su Zimo with ripples in her eyes that seemed to exude a mysterious charm as she said gently, "So, this corpse is you." Chapter 1898. Meiji's voice was soft and seductive, as though it could awaken the evil desires in the depths of one's heart. Although Su Zimo's Tao heart was firm and unshakable, he felt that he could not suppress it at that moment. After all, the difference in their cultivation realms was way too great. A look of surprise flashed through Meiji's eyes. She had not expected that this puny mystic immortal would be able to withstand her seductive voice and not succumb immediately. Meiji was in no hurry as she channeled her essence spirit and her eyes shone with a strange luster. This was a visual technique from the immortal art she cultivated. Not many heavenly immortals of the same cultivation realm could defend against it, let alone a mystic immortal. Su Zimo's gaze met with Meiji's. Su Zimo felt a boom in his mind. Instantly, he felt dizzy and his consciousness blurred. His body turned unbearably hot and limp. Not good. Su Zimo was alarmed. All of a sudden, Su Zimo's eyes began to change as well. His left eye turned pitch black without any whites as it emitted a cold aura. His right eye turned as white as jade and shone with a blinding light like the blazing sun. The two visual techniques, illumination and nether fluorescence, were released. Under normal circumstances, Su Zimo's consciousness had already turned blurry and he had lost control of his body. There was no way he could release visual techniques. However, his eyes contained the two divine stones, illumination and nether fluorescence. Stimulated by the external world, the two divine stones retaliated automatically and released two visual techniques that charged towards Meiji. Initially, Meiji thought that she had Su Zimo completely under her control. To think that Su Zimo would counterattack with two visual techniques, she was caught off guard. Instantly, the visual technique was released and its power descended, striking Meiji's body. The two completely different powers, yin and yang, collided within Meiji's body and released an extremely terrifying destructive power. Ah! Meiji shrieked tragically and swayed, almost falling from midair. But very quickly, Meiji circulated her yuan qi and expelled the energy from her body. Su Zimo's realm was limited. In the end, he couldn't display the true power of the candlelight and nether glow. This time, the counterattack of the eye technique didn't cause any damage to Meiji. After cultivating to the heavenly immortal realm, even a drop of blood could allow one to be reborn. This kind of small injury, to Meiji, would be healed in just a few breaths. But Meiji's face sank and she was secretly shocked. She knew very well that if the two of them were at the same cultivation level, it was very likely that she would be destroyed in body and soul by the two forces of yin and yang. Good, very good. Meiji nodded and smiled again. You're more interesting than I thought. I want to see what other secrets you have. Before her voice faded away, Meiji's figure flashed and appeared in front of Su Zimo in a flash. She reached out her white hand and grabbed at Su Zimo's glabella. Not only did she want to seize the treasures on Su Zimo's body, she also wanted to use the soul-searching technique to search through Su Zimo's memories and uncover all of his secrets. Screech! All of a sudden, a clear and loud cry sounded from Su Zimo's glabella. That sound was extremely similar to the cry of a phoenix. However, there were some differences as well. The might and will contained in that voice had already far surpassed that of the divine phoenix. Even the roar of the taboo dragon phoenix could not compare to it. When she heard that cry, Meiji shuddered and frowned with a pained expression. Immediately after, a scarlet flame burst forth from Su Zimo's glabella and charged towards Meiji. Meiji was a genius among heavenly immortals and broke free from the cry quickly. She regained her senses and retreated. At the same time, she waved her sleeves and essence chi gathered wildly, condensing into a gigantic shield in front of her. Bang! When the flame hit the shield, a muffled sound was heard. Meiji retreated once more. Suddenly, her gaze fell onto the shield in front of her, and her expression changed. At that moment, the shield that was condensed from heaven and earth essence chi was burning wildly. In the blink of an eye, it turned into nothingness and vanished. Before Meiji's eyes, a gigantic scarlet flame burned. The flames surged into the skies and burned half the firmaments red. Within the flames, the figure of an immortal bird gradually appeared. The immortal bird was similar to a phoenix, but it did not have a massive body like one. This immortal bird was more like a celestial sparrow. Its entire body was crimson red, and when its wings were spread out, they were only around 3 m long. However, its comparatively small body was suffused with an aura that caused one's heart to tremble. The celestial sparrow's eyes coldly stared at Meiji. Its eyes were cold and filled with endless majesty. That gaze was as though it was looking at an ant. That was the disregard of an absolute superior. Against the gaze of the immortal sparrow, Meiji dodged instinctively and even had the urge to prostrate in worship. This feeling caused her to be greatly alarmed. Could that be the sacred beast, the vermilion bird? Meiji thought of a possibility and her pupils constricted as she gasped. 30 years ago, the sacred beast, the azure dragon, disappeared in a flash. Today, another vermilion bird had descended. That was most likely not a coincidence. Meiji looked at Suzumo deeply. Be it the azure dragon or the vermilion bird, they were both related to this lad. Meiji's guess was right. That vermilion bird was the pattern carved on the second wall of the bronze square tripod in Suzumo's consciousness. The azure dragon on the first wall of the tripod had expended too much energy after 2 consecutive battles and fell into a deep slumber once more. However, after devouring many numinous treasure shards and the god-fiend spirit summoning banner, the vermilion bird on the second wall of the tripod had already awakened. Sensing that Suzumo was in danger, the vermilion bird opened its eyes and charged out of the bronze square tripod. Meiji wanted to retreat. However, on second thought, Suzumo had way too many treasures on him. That mystic immortal had obtained almost all the benefits of this abyss. Furthermore, he had way too many secrets. Where had he been hiding for the past 30 years? What was up with the 2 sacred beasts, the azure dragon and the vermilion bird? Just now, how did that lad manage to cultivate that dual visual technique of yin and yang? If she could suppress that lad, the benefits would be unimaginable. Meiji calmed down swiftly and glanced at the vermilion bird in midair not far away. Then, she looked at Suzumo and smiled charmingly. Just like the azure dragon 30 years ago, this vermilion bird is only in the form of a spirit without flesh. The god-fiend in the spirit summoning banner is also in the form of a spirit. It's not surprising that the soul of a sacred beast can suppress it. However, I'm afraid it won't be that easy to deal with me. Just as Suzumo was about to speak, the vermilion bird in midair seemed to have understood Meiji's words as 2 streaks of flames burst forth from its eyes. The vermilion bird was enraged. To it, Meiji's words were a form of provocation. Universe within sleeves. Meiji did not dare to be careless and channeled her essence spirit, releasing a supreme divine power instantly. She waved her sleeves and it was dark and deep, as though it was a world that could contain all living beings. The 2 streaks of flames deviated from their trajectories and entered her sleeves. Meiji heaved a sigh of relief. However, the next moment, her expression changed and she flung her palms wildly. Her sleeves began to burn from the inside out. The fire grew stronger and stronger, and it even began to burn her white and tender arm. Chapter 1899. Those were flames spewing out of the vermilion bird's eyes. How could they be devoured so easily? Even Universe in sleeves could not do it. In the blink of an eye, Meiji's sleeves were burned to ashes. Not only that, the surface of her arm was charred black and her skin cracked, emitting a pungent smell. What was even more frightening was that the fire did not show any signs of extinguishing and was spreading rapidly along her arm towards her upper body. A look of determination flashed through Meiji's eyes. Exclamation point! With a backhand slash, Meiji severed her arm. Blood spewed out from the severed arm and scattered on the scarlet flames, sizzling and green smoke billowed. The severed arm fell and turned into ashes. Channeling her essence spirit, Meiji regrew her severed arm in the blink of an eye. Screech! The vermilion bird let out a long cry and flapped its wings. The flames on its body burned fiercely as it descended from the skies and lunged towards Meiji. The essence chi around Meiji surged as she spun her saber and swung it forward. A cold saber beam burst forth and the surrounding temperature plummeted. Boom! The saber collided with the vermilion bird. The 2 powers, one cold and one hot, collided and were evenly matched. Suzumo dodged far away and did not make a move. Given his current strength, he would not be able to cause any waves even if he made a move. The residual power from the battle between Meiji and the vermilion bird was enough to kill him. Suzumo watched coldly from the sidelines and had a clearer grasp of the situation. Meiji was right. The vermilion bird did not have a physical body and the combat strength it could unleash in its soul form was indeed limited. However, as time passed by, the flames on the vermilion bird burned brighter and more condensed. It even turned into scarlet lava that dripped from its body slowly. The vermilion bird was a sacred beast after all and became stronger as it fought. Under the constant entanglement of the vermilion bird, Meiji's expression turned extremely terrible and she was gradually unable to hold on. The flames burning on the vermilion bird were way too terrifying. Not only did the flames possess immense lethality, they could also burn Heaven-Earth Yuan Qi. The Heaven-Earth Yuan Qi around Meiji was almost completely burned by the flames. During the battle, Meiji repeatedly unleashed her peerless abilities and used all her strength. Finally, she broke through the vermilion bird's entanglement and attacked Su Zimo. Meiji faintly realized that as long as she could kill Su Zimo, the vermilion bird Holy Soul would collapse without a fight. However, Su Zimo's reaction was also extremely fast. He immediately crashed into the abyss wall and hid in that mysterious space. The space was created by the horned dragon. Su Zimo had the dragon phoenix primordial spirit and could enter and leave freely, but Meiji could not. After chasing Su Zimo to no avail, Meiji was once again entangled by the vermilion bird. Her face was covered in ashes and her hair was curled up. At this time, Meiji slightly opened her mouth and spat out a hot breath. After a long period of fighting, the flames of the vermilion bird had gradually seeped into her body. "We can't stay here any longer." Meiji was secretly shocked. If it weren't for her many trump cards and secret techniques, she would have died a long time ago. "I've got to get rid of this vermilion bird and find a safe place to purge the fire poison in my body. Otherwise, there will be endless trouble." At that thought, Meiji channeled her essence spirit and released her essence spirit's secret skill to fight the vermilion bird head-on. Meiji shuddered and her gaze dimmed. The vermilion bird shuddered slightly as well and paused in midair. The impact this time round was not small on the vermilion bird. Its life force was clearly much weaker and its light dimmed significantly as well. This battle had consumed too much of the vermilion bird's energy. Of course, Meiji did not have it easy either and spat out a mouthful of blood. Seizing the opportunity, Meiji's figure flashed and she left the battlefield rapidly, escaping out of Dragon Abyss Planet. The vermilion bird glared at Meiji coldly and turned around, preparing to return to the bronze square tripod. Su Zimo's heart sank. This battle had consumed too much of the vermilion bird's energy. For the vermilion bird, it was enough to repel Meiji. However, for Su Zimo, there was a high chance that Meiji's escape would bring him a calamity. Meiji was backed by a massive immortal sect. The day Meiji made a comeback would be the day of his death. Furthermore, Meiji already knew some of his secrets. If she were to escape, the consequences would be dire. However, Su Zimo was only a grade 7 mystic immortal. Even if Meiji was severely injured by the vermilion bird, he was powerless. "Don't come back. Chase after her." Su Zimo could only look at the vermilion bird that was turning around and try to channel his spirit consciousness, hoping that the vermilion bird could sense his intentions. Be it the Azure Dragon or the vermilion bird, they appeared on their own each time and had never listened to Su Zimo's commands. Su Zimo did not know if his current actions would work either. All of a sudden, the vermilion bird paused for a moment. Su Zimo was invigorated and said hurriedly, "Kill her at all costs." With a cold expression, the vermilion bird turned around and chased after Meiji, who was fleeing into the distance. Shoo! A scarlet beam of light tore through the void. No matter how fast Meiji was, she could not be faster than the vermilion bird. She sensed a scorching heat wave behind her and was shocked as she could not help but turn back to look. The vermilion bird was murderous and the killing intent in its eyes was even more condensed than just now. Screech! The vermilion bird's cry sounded once more, piercing through metal and rocks. Meiji's expression was pained as blood flowed out of her ears. "I'll fight it out with you." Meiji grit her teeth and shouted. She summoned many Dharma treasures from her storage bag that turned into countless divine lights that shot towards the vermilion bird. Swoosh! The vermilion bird curled its body and seemed to have condensed into a gigantic fireball that smashed towards the Dharma treasures. Boom! There was a deafening sound. The Dharma treasures were sent flying in all directions. Every single one of them burned with flames and fell from midair. It was clear that they were destroyed. The light on the vermilion bird dimmed once more. Meiji and the vermilion bird clashed once more. Each time the two of them clashed, the vermilion bird's aura would weaken. As for Meiji, the wounds on her body increased and the fire poison in her body intensified. In the end, Meiji's organs were burning with flames. Ah! Meiji shrieked in pain. She opened her mouth and spat out balls of fire. The flames were way too terrifying and there was no way to escape them. Even with blood reincarnation, it was not enough. Against the flames, all her bloodlines would be refined completely. Finally, Meiji could not hold on any longer and shrieked once more, "Heavenly fiend disintegration!" Su Zimo knew the terror of the heavenly fiend disintegration the best. Back in Tianhuang mainland, Monk Daming made use of this peerless divine power to drag the blood demon Dao Lord's clone down with him. Bang! Meiji's body exploded into a blood mist that burst forth with an extremely terrifying power that engulfed the vermilion bird instantly. The vermilion bird's light was dim to begin with and its aura was weak. The power of the heavenly fiend disintegration descended and the vermilion bird shattered on the spot, turning into a scarlet beam of light that returned to Su Zimo's glabella and returned to the bronze square tripod. The vermilion bird image on the second wall of the tripod recovered. However, there were no signs of life and the eyes of the vermilion bird were tightly shut. The azure dragon and vermilion bird went silent. Although he had lost this powerful trump card for the time being, at the very least, he managed to kill Meiji and prevent many future troubles. Su Zimo put away Meiji's storage bag and took a deep breath of air. Without hesitation, he sped towards Snow Wind Ridge. Thupin Mandarin. Chapter 1900. Outside Snow Wind Ridge. The Wolf Army and Goshawk Gang's 100,000 troops attacked the Immortal Array continuously for 7 days and 7 nights. This Immortal Array was initially indestructible, but under the constant attacks of the 100,000 troops, the energy of the spirit stones in the Immortal Array's array cores decreased rapidly. The light emitted by the Immortal Array was obviously much dimmer than before. Every attack of the army would cause the Immortal Array to shake. After 7 days of recuperation, the wound on Yu Hao's abdomen had been bandaged and stopped bleeding. Although he was still unable to fight, he had at least regained the ability to move. Yu Hao and Xia Qingying looked at the army outside Snow Wind Ridge with serious expressions. The two of them knew very well that once the spirit stones in the array cores were used up and the Immortal Array broke, it would be the time of Snow Wind Ridge's destruction. There were no extra spirit stones in Snow Wind Ridge. Even if there were, the two of them did not know how to replace them. This Immortal Array would not last for long. Xia Qingying held Yu Hao's hand tightly. The two of them looked at each other, and there was no need for words. Even if the two of them died, they would die together. Big brother, almost all the major factions are here, but no one dares to stand out and fight against the Wolf Army and Goshawk Gang. Shen Fei sighed. Over the past 7 days, Scorpio Gang, Thunder Hall, and other major factions on Dragon Abyss Planet had arrived at Snow Wind Ridge one after another. Moreover, those who came were all the leaders of the major factions. The Scorpio Gang's leader, Thunder Hall's leader, Heaven Fiend Sect's leader, Mystic Een Mountain's leader, Skyfire Hall's leader, and Profound Light Sect's leader had all come personally. However, be it the Scorpio Gang's leader, Thunder Hall's leader, or the other leaders, they did not bring many people. Some brought thousands, while others brought only a few hundred people. This already showed their attitude. These gang leaders and hall masters had no intention of helping Snow Wind Ridge at all. They had only come to watch the show. Some of them might even have the thought of taking advantage of the situation and adding insult to injury. Yu Hao shook his head slightly. It's not that they don't dare, but they don't want to. Given the strength of the major factions, if they work together, how can the Wolf Army and Goshawk Gang resist? However, they all have their own ulterior motives. They are all worried that fighting against the two bandits will weaken their strength, so no one is willing to stand out. Kakaka. Suddenly, a series of jarring sounds could be heard from the barrier around Snow Wind Ridge as cracks appeared on it, spreading and expanding rapidly. The immortal array was about to shatter. Prepare to fight to the death. Yu Hao gritted his teeth and ordered, "Rumble." At this moment, dust and smoke billowed from the ground in the distance, and a violent tremor could be felt. There was a huge army rushing towards this place. Feng Yan, Songya, and the leaders of the major forces all looked over. The people of Feng Shuling also tried their best to look through the crowd. "It's the Twin Dragon sect." Cries of surprise came from the crowd. From the looks of it, there are about 40,000 soldiers. Shocked, Shen Fei couldn't help but ask, "Is the Twin Dragon sect here to help us?" "Let's wait and see. It's hard to tell." Gu Wenjun took a deep breath and tried her best to stay calm. "Ko Yong, Su Jian, why did you two bring so many people here?" The leader of the Scorpio gang raised his eyebrows and asked. "It's rare for two great bandits to gather together. Naturally, we have to kill to our heart's content." At the very front of the Twin Dragon sect, a tall and sturdy man said loudly with a murderous aura. That was one of the Twin Dragon sect, Ko Yong. The mountain master of Mystic Yin Mountain, Ding Yi, said eccentrically, "Guys, I advise you guys not to get involved in this mess lest you get implicated." Behind Ko Yong, a figure caught up. Su Jian asked with an indifferent expression, "Since when did Mystic Yin Mountain side with the bandits?" Ding Yi harumphed coldly with a dark expression. Suddenly, Feng Yan raised his voice. "Today, it's a feud between the ferocious wolf army, Goshawk sect, and Feng Shuling. Fellow Taoists, please give us some face and I'll definitely thank you heavily in the future." "Ha!" Ko Yong burst into laughter and slapped in reverse. The saber on his back jumped out and let out a series of clanging sounds as saber chi filled the air. "You're just a bandit leader. How dare you address me as a brother?" Ko Yong hollered and leaped into the air with his saber. Descending from the skies, he slashed down towards the ferocious wolf army with a bedazzling saber beam. Everyone's hearts skipped a beat. None of them expected Ko Yong of the Twin Dragon sect to be so domineering as to choose to take on two bandits head-on. Su Jian also waved his arm and pointed forward. The 40,000-strong Twin Dragon sect army swarmed forward and clashed with the 100,000-strong army of the two bandits. The moment the two armies clashed, endless blood mist burst forth. Boom! At the same time, the immortal array outside Feng Shuling could not hold on and completely shattered. Everyone in Feng Shuling was exposed to the two bandits. I've long heard of the Twin Dragon sect's methods. Since it's rare for us to meet today, let's exchange pointers. Right at this moment, Ding Yi of Mystic Yin Mountain suddenly stood out and joined forces with the Right Guardian to charge towards Ko Yong and Su Jian. I didn't expect Mystic Yin Mountain to make a move as well. The Thunderclap Hall Master frowned slightly. The Scorpio gang's leader sneered. The profound Yin Mountain is very close to the Twin Dragon sect. If we can kill the Twin Dragon sect here, the profound Yin Mountain can borrow the strength of the two bandits to swallow the Twin Dragon sect and strengthen themselves. Looking at the situation, not only Feng Shuling, but Twin Dragon sect might also be wiped out today. The sect master of Mystic Light sect said. With Ding Yi and the Right Guardian of Mystic Yin Mountain holding back the Twin Dragon sect, Feng Yan, the Wolf Army's second leader, Songya, and the Goshawk sect's deputy sect master had a chance to escape and charge towards Feng Shuling. These were 4 rank 8 mystic immortals. And in Feng Shuling, other than Yu Hao and the Silver Giant, there was no other rank 7 mystic immortal. Yu Hao and the Silver Giant were both heavily injured and could not participate in the battle. The 4 rank 8 mystic immortals charged into the battlefield, and in the blink of an eye, Feng Shuling's army was in chaos and suffered heavy casualties. No one could stop the 4 rank 8 mystic immortals from killing. Songya led hundreds of goshawks and constantly attacked in the sky, causing great damage to Feng Shuling and Twin Dragon sect. Although the Twin Dragon sect was also a rank 8 mystic immortal, they could only jump up to 90 feet in the sky. But the goshawks could fly hundreds of feet in the sky. It was extremely difficult to capture and tame a goshawk. Although this goshawk army did not have many people, only a few hundred, they were invincible with this move. No one in the mystic immortal realm could hurt them. Haha. Feng Yan looked at Yu Hao and the rest and laughed unscrupulously. You bastards should have died long ago. Today, not to mention the Twin Dragon sect, even if the gods came, they would not be able to save you. Feng Shuling will be removed from the list today. Before he could finish his sentence, an ear-piercing sound of something breaking through the air came from the distant horizon. Good, good, good. Someone spoke. The first good word was still in the sky. When it came to the third good word, this voice had already appeared on the battlefield. This kind of speed was absolutely horrifying. With me here today, no one can remove Feng Shuling's name. A green figure stood in the air with a pair of enormous wings that flickered with golden light flapping behind him. His black hair fluttered, his gaze was like lightning, and his aura was monstrous. His shout was like a thunderclap that was awe-inspiring. Thupin Chinese. Chapter 1901. The arrival of this figure attracted countless gazes. It's Su Zimo. Brother Su. Ah, Boss Su is not dead. Wind Snow Ridge was in an uproar. Yu Hao and the others were in high spirits. This is Su Zimo? I heard that this kid has the ability to kill those above his level. With his return, there will be many more variables in today's battle. I don't think so. No matter how strong this kid is, can he fight against 4 Stage 8 Mystic Immortals? It was the first time the leaders of the various forces had seen Su Zimo, and they began to discuss. Su Zimo, you came at the right time. Ding Yi of Mysticine Mountain said with a murderous look, Today, you will pay with your life for my son. Su Zimo, you killed 2 leaders of my wolf army and slaughtered tens of thousands of my brothers. Today, I will make you pay with your blood. Feng Yan also shouted. Pay with your blood. Many cultivators of the wolf army were in a killing frenzy, and they roared loudly with great momentum. Roar! Su Zimo suddenly opened his mouth and let out an earth-shattering roar at the crowd below. It was like a sudden explosion of thunder. This was the Azure Dragon's roar, which was even more terrifying than the Dragon Phoenix's roar. It contained a supreme will and terrifying sound domain killing power. The cultivators of the Wolf Army and the Goshawk Gang who were near Su Zimo were all shocked. Some Stage 4 and Stage 5 Mystic Immortals' bodies were torn apart by this roar, and they turned into a cloud of blood mist. Bloody scars appeared on the faces of some Level 6 Mystic Immortals, and their gazes were lifeless while their expressions dimmed. They fell to the ground and perished. Even many Stage 7 Mystic Immortals could not withstand it. They were bleeding from their 7 orifices, and their expressions were mournful. They had completely lost the ability to fight. Under this roar, close to 10,000 cultivators died on the spot. Even the Goshawk army in the air had dozens of them killed on the spot. The morale of the 100,000-strong army that had just risen was suppressed by Su Zimo's roar, and it disappeared with a bang. There was even a brief moment of silence on the battlefield. The crowd was in an uproar. What kind of sound domain secret technique is this? How could it possess such terrifying power? The Thunder Rumbling Hall's Hall Master exclaimed in shock. The Thunderclap Hall also knew a kind of sound domain secret technique, but it was far inferior to this Azure Dragon's roar. Under this roar, his mind trembled slightly, and he even had the urge to prostrate himself in worship. That doesn't make sense. The Scorpio Gang's leader frowned and muttered. It said that this Su Zimo is only a 6th stage Mystic Immortal. How can a sound domain secret technique be so powerful? He doesn't seem to be a Stage 6 Mystic Immortal. At this moment, the sect master of the Profound Light sect seemed to have sensed something, and his voice trembled. On the battlefield, many of the Shen Immortals who were further away from Su Zimo had managed to escape, but they were still in pain. Even Feng Yan and the other Stage 8 Mystic Immortals shuddered. They felt a slight pain in their heads and felt dizzy. How terrifying! Feng Yan and the others were secretly shocked. If they were to fight head-on, Su Zimo's sudden roar would definitely kill them on the spot. You want to kill me with just your motley crew? Su Zimo glared at Feng Yan with a burning gaze and said coldly, Hand over your life. Before he finished speaking, the golden wings on Su Zimo's back flapped, and his speed skyrocketed. He turned into a golden light and charged towards Feng Yan. "Stop him!" Feng Yan was taken aback by Su Zimo's aura and shouted out hurriedly. Immobilization Art. Wind Summoning Art. Soul Devouring Palm. Feng Yan, the second in command of the Vicious Wolf Army, Sangya, and the second in command of the Goshawk Gang attacked at the same time. Many small techniques were unleashed. At the same time, a few cold lights pierced through the sky. When the 4-stage 8 mystic immortals released their techniques, they also took out their magic treasures without holding back. In Su Zimo's Sea of Consciousness, the lotus platform of creation bloomed with rays of light. The moment the immobilization art's power descended, it was dissolved by him and did not affect him at all. The stronger the cultivator's primordial spirit, the greater the effect of the immobilization art on the opponent. Su Zimo's primordial spirit cultivation had already reached stage 9 mystic immortal. The immobilization art of a stage 8 mystic immortal was completely useless against him. As for Su Zimo's golden winged rock, it was so fast that it even passed through the remaining small techniques and magic treasures. Boom! All the small techniques and magic treasures missed and collided with a loud bang. The evil wolf army's second commander, who was at the very front, was horrified. He could only watch helplessly as the golden light rushed over. He wanted to dodge. But the speed of the golden light was faster than his thoughts. Just as he was about to escape, the golden light pierced through him. A fountain of blood gushed out. The second in command of the Vicious Wolf Army let out a shrill scream. The next moment, the scream stopped abruptly. That golden light was Su Zimo's physical body. It contained a terrifying power and pierced through the second in command of the Vicious Wolf Army. This power was enough to destroy him. Bang! The second in command of the Vicious Wolf Army's physical body exploded on the spot and his primordial spirit was destroyed. After this person died, Feng Yan was behind him. Feng Yan saw that the situation was not good and had already fled towards the army behind him. He knew a small technique, the invisibility art. If he could blend into the army and release the invisibility art, he would definitely be able to avoid Su Zimo's detection and escape this calamity. Su Zimo seemed to have sensed Feng Yan's intention. His body flashed and he disappeared from the spot. When he appeared again, he was already behind Feng Yan. True Dragon's 9 flashes. It's this secret technique again. Some people who had seen Su Zimo in action in Dragon Lake City exclaimed. Back then, during the battle in Dragon Lake City, Su Zimo's many powerful techniques had already spread across Dragon Lake Star. However, the leaders of the various forces present refused to believe it. How could a mystic immortal release a technique that was similar to teleportation? It was only when they saw it with their own eyes that the leaders of the various forces realized how terrifying this movement technique was. Feng Yan felt the murderous intent behind him and was shocked. He had also heard that Su Zimo had a movement technique that was similar to teleportation. Realizing that something was wrong, he made a prompt decision and activated his primordial spirit to release a small technique. He pointed at a stage 6 mystic immortal not far away and shouted, "Form swap." The power of the technique spread. Feng Yan suddenly disappeared from the spot and was replaced by the stage 6 mystic immortal not far away. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, the two of them exchanged positions. This small technique did not have much killing power. However, at this critical moment, Feng Yan released the form swap and escaped from death. It could be said to be perfect as he narrowly avoided a calamity. Feng Yan was able to become the leader of the Vicious Wolf Army for so many years and naturally had his outstanding points. Just this alertness and reaction had already surpassed many mystic immortals of the same level. Even the many cultivators who were watching the battle were stunned when they saw this scene. It was a pity that he met Su Zimo. Just as Feng Yan used form swap and left the spot, Su Zimo's expression was cold and his body flashed as well. He had already cultivated to the second level of the 9 true dragon flashes and could flash twice consecutively. Chapter 1902. Feng Yen used form shift to escape. Just as he was about to release his invisibility technique to blend into the army, he suddenly felt his heart palpitate. An even stronger sense of danger shrouded him. "You can't escape." Su Zimo's voice sounded. He was right behind him and close at hand. Feng Yan's eyes widened in horror. His scalp was about to explode as he felt a chill run down his spine. His limbs turned cold. Even though he still had powerful strength, he could not release any of it at this moment. How was this possible? He had just released form shift. How could Su Zimo catch up to him in an instant and appear behind him? Bang! Feng Yan no longer had the chance to figure out the reason behind this. A sharp pain came from his mind. He even heard the sound of his skull cracking. A huge force surged into his consciousness and shattered his essence spirit. In the next moment, Feng Yan lost consciousness. There was a momentary pause on the battlefield. Feng Yan was in the middle of it and did not understand what had happened. However, bystanders saw it clearly. Right in front of countless gazes, Su Zimo's figure flashed twice consecutively and smashed Feng Yan's head with a single palm strike, killing the latter. The leader of the Vicious Wolf Army was a peak stage 8 mystic immortal. He had been on the Dragon Abyss planet for many years and had experienced countless bloodshed. In the end, he could escape death and live until now. However, he could not escape from a top-notch movement technique like the 9 true dragon flashes. Not to mention Feng Yan, even the prodigies of the native living beings of the upper world might not be able to escape from Su Zimo's pursuit this time. The two leaders of the Vicious Wolf Army were both dead in a few breaths' time. The tens of thousands of cultivators of the Vicious Wolf Army were all stunned on the spot and could not react in a short period of time. 2 leaders, 2 stage 8 mystic immortals, died just like that? Ha! Ko Yong laughed loudly as he fought with Ding Yi. Good kill. Song Ya's expression was solemn as he suddenly shouted, "Everyone be careful. This person is not at stage 6 mystic essence realm. He's a stage 7 mystic immortal." What? How is this possible? 30 years ago, he was only a level 6 mystic immortal. What kind of innate physique does this person have? What kind of cultivation method did he cultivate? How could his cultivation speed be so terrifying? The expressions of the cultivators changed. Duan Tianliang, Xia Qingying, and the others, who were the first to come into contact with Su Zimo, were even more shocked. When Su Zimo first arrived on the Dragon Abyss Star, he was only a Tier 4 Xian Immortal. Presently, only a little over 100 years had passed, yet Su Zimo had already attained the 7th rank of the mysterious immortal realm. This cultivation speed was something that even some of the top experts and successors of powerful sects, with countless cultivation resources and cultivation techniques, could not achieve. Could this kid be the reincarnation of an immortal? In the upper realm, there were some legends that once one's cultivation reached a certain level, as long as one could ensure that a strand of one's soul did not scatter and enter the cycle of reincarnation, one could be reborn. When a reincarnated immortal cultivated to a certain level, they would be able to recover the memories of their previous lives. Some immortals were reincarnated. There were even elders from their previous lives, Dao companions, or close relatives who came to receive them and let them re-enter the immortal sect. Even if he's the reincarnation of an immortal, it's impossible for him to cultivate so quickly, right? The leaders of the Scorpio sect, Thunderclap Hall, and the others were all shocked. "Goshawk Army, listen to my orders," Sangya said in a deep voice. "Continue to rise into the sky and increase the distance between us and this kid before attacking." This was his greatest reliance. Hundreds of cultivators rode on goshawks and circled high in the sky, looking down from above. They were almost invincible and no one could threaten them at all. The hundreds of goshawks did not dare to be careless and hurriedly rose into the sky. Su Zimo looked up and sneered. "Sangya, do you think that the pair of golden wings behind me is just for decoration?" As soon as he said that, Su Zimo flapped his golden wings and took off. A golden light shot into the sky. In almost the blink of an eye, Su Zimo was already hundreds of feet high in the sky, flying even higher than the hundreds of goshawks. Those were the wings of the golden-winged roc. Among the flying races, the golden-winged roc was the absolute king. Retreat! Retreat! Song Ye's expression changed starkly as he shouted. Su Zimo descended from the skies and charged into the goshawk army. It was as though he was on a rampage and no one could stop him. The massacre had already begun. Run! Many of the goshawks howled and fled in all directions. However, no matter how fast the goshawks were, they could not match the speed of the golden-winged roc and would be caught by Su Zimo before long and killed on the spot. Nanmingli fire! Su Zimo channeled his essence spirit and channeled a dermic art. Suddenly, 2 balls of flames appeared in his palms. They were demonic and terrifying, emitting a terrifying aura. This time round, he did not fuse the Nanmingli fire with the 3 Dao fires. After all, it was a secret skill recorded on the bronze square tripod and he wanted to test the power of the Nanmingli fire. Burn! Su Zimo's spirit consciousness moved and the 2 balls of flames scattered in midair, forming a gigantic wall of fire that blocked hundreds of goshawks. Many goshawks released their divine powers and secret skills. They summoned their dermic treasures, tore their talismans and released their trump cards in an attempt to break through the wall of fire. Unfortunately, be it divine powers or dermic treasures, they were incinerated when they entered the Nanmingli fire. Some of the goshawks that collided with it were burned to ashes before long. Even a single spark would ignite within the bodies of the goshawks and eventually engulf their entire bodies. It was like a flaming cage, trapping the hundreds of goshawk army soldiers within. No one could escape. Even the deputy sect master of Goshawk sect, a grade 8 mystic immortal, could not withstand the burning of the Nanmingli fire and fell from midair. Before he landed on the ground, he was already reduced to ashes. I've long heard that Su Zimo is skilled in fire Dao techniques. To think that his flames would be this terrifying. The might of that flame shouldn't be at its peak yet. Below Dragon Lake City, Su Zimo once released a fire secret skill that fused flames of different colors to increase their might several times. If a single flame is already this powerful, if he fuses a few more flames. The leaders of the factions did not dare to continue thinking about it. Those flames could definitely kill them with ease. In midair, under the illumination of the flames, Song Ye's face was flushed red and his eyes were filled with shock, fear and regret. Fellow Taoist Su, I admit defeat. Song Ye took a deep breath and grit his teeth. I wonder if you can give me a chance, exalted immortal. I'm willing to serve you faithfully. Not only did Song Ye change the way he addressed Su Zimo, he even knelt down. My army of tens of thousands will listen to the orders of the exalted immortal as well. Song Ye's heart was as clear as a mirror and he had long understood. The 2 leaders of the vicious wolf army were dead and the deputy sect master of Goshawk sect was dead. He was the only one left and it was difficult for him to escape death alone. If he could follow Su Zimo, not only would he be able to preserve his life, he might even obtain some benefits. Although this was a loss of face, compared to his life, it was not worth mentioning. You're not worthy. Just as Song Ye was contemplating, Su Zimo's voice sounded. Although it was only 3 words, Song Ye's heart sank to the bottom. Song Ye raised his head and was about to speak. Su Zimo had already arrived beside him. Closing his fingers, the surrounding Nanming primordial fire also gathered and returned to his palm in an instant. Su Zimo tossed it casually. The Nanmingli fire landed on Song Ye's head. Accompanied by a tragic cry, the flames engulfed Song Ye. Chapter 1903. The crowd was shocked. It had only been half an incense's time since Su Zimo appeared. However, the 4 mystic immortals with the strongest combat strength of the ferocious wolf army and Goshawk sect were all dead. The leaders of the various factions were only class 8 mystic immortals and their combat strength was similar to the 4 dead Feng Yen. This meant that if Su Zimo were to attack them, they would not be able to withstand more than a few moves. The leaders of the various factions were secretly shocked with wary expressions. Although the ferocious wolf army and Goshawk sect were bloodthirsty, the army started to fall into chaos when they saw Feng Yen and the other 3 dead. Some were fighting, some were fleeing and some were at a loss. The army of tens of thousands was in a state of disunity. If those bandits were allowed to escape, they would not be a threat to Su Zimo. However, they could become a hidden danger for Feng Shuling. With a cold expression, Su Zimo conjured a sword art with both hands and released his massive spirit consciousness, slashing towards the crowd beneath him. The sword art in his right hand released 100,000 streams of sword chi that were blinding and white. Killing intent surged into the firmaments and the stars were shifted. Every single stream of sword chi was incomparably sharp and swept through the crowd, piercing the flesh of many bandits with ease. What was even more frightening was that the cultivators of the Goshawk sect, Ferocious Wolf Army, Feng Shuling and Double Dragon sect were fighting on the battlefield below. Every single one of the 100,000 streams of sword chi slashed towards the bandits of the Ferocious Wolf Army and Goshawk sect with extreme precision, and none of them were injured. Initially, Su Jian was worried that the cultivators of Double Dragon sect would be implicated by the terrifying sword art. To think that the sword chi would be able to bypass their cultivators and pierce towards the bandits as though it had a mind of its own. What strong control! Su Jian was secretly speechless. The fact that Su Zimo was able to control 100,000 streams of sword chi with such precision meant that his essence spirit cultivation was probably above level 7 mystic essence realm. Wails filled the battlefield as blood flowed like rivers. The heaven-slaying sword art displayed its killing intent to the fullest. The tens of thousands of bandits finally couldn't hold on any longer. They completely collapsed and fled in all directions. However, under the pursuit of the people from Feng Shuling and the Twin Dragon sect, as well as the encirclement of the heavenly slaying sword chi, not many people could leave this place alive. Blood mist filled the air, and severed limbs flew everywhere. The cultivators from the Scorpio sect and the other major forces were dumbfounded. Ever since they ascended to the upper realm and descended to the Dragon Abyss planet for so many years, they had never seen such a bloody battle with their own eyes. The lives of tens of thousands of soldiers were like grass in the hands of that green-robed cultivator. With a wave of his sword finger, they all broke apart. Roar! Su Zimo's left hand slashed out a dragon snake. The divine dragon descended from the sky and the soaring serpent emerged from the ground, charging towards Ding Yi and the right protector of profound Yin Mountain. Ding Ye's expression changed greatly. In fact, when Feng Yen and Sangya died one after another, he already had thoughts of retreating. But he and the right protector were entangled by Ko Yong and Su Jian, and couldn't break free for a while. To think that Su Zimo's counterattack would be so fast, fierce and domineering that he didn't even have a chance to react. The right protector was already fighting with trepidation to begin with. Even without the descent of the dragon snake of the earth-slaying sword art, he wouldn't have been able to last long against Su Jian. Now that the dragon snake had arrived, the right protector of profound Yin Mountain let out a tragic cry and was instantly minced by the dragon snake without a corpse left. Su Zimo. Ding Yi opened his mouth, wanting to say something. Su Zimo's figure drifted and he had already arrived in front of him, glaring at Ding Yi coldly with a sharp gaze. Ding Ye's heart turned cold when he was glared at by those two gazes. Su Zimo merely stood opposite him motionlessly and looked at him calmly, exuding an irresistible might and will. An illusion seemed to have appeared before Ding Ye's eyes. Behind Su Zimo, he saw countless corpses and seas of blood. Instantly, his mind broke down. Ko Yong seized the opportunity and slashed down. A gigantic head flew into the air and a fountain of blood gushed out. Ding Ye's head spun a few times in midair before it was split into pieces by Ko Yong's next attack and his essence spirit was destroyed. The 500 cultivators that Ding Yi brought with him saw that, but none of them dared to step forward. "Brother Su, you're truly capable." Ko Yong could not help but praise. Su Jian cupped his fists at Su Zimo as well and smiled. "I often hear one mention you. Initially, I didn't believe it. Now that I've met you today, I know that she's not lying." The one that Su Jian was referring to was Su Wan. Su Zimo nodded to the twin dragons with a relaxed expression. "Thanks." Thereafter, he nodded slightly to Su Wan. Among the 7 factions, only Twin Dragon's sect was willing to stand out and help win Snow Ridge. Su Wan must have something to do with that. At this point of the battle, there was no longer any suspense. The 2 bandits were completely defeated. Against the pursuit of the cultivators of Twin Dragon's sect and win Snow Ridge, there were very few who could escape alive. Su Zimo arrived beside Yu Hao and the Silver Giant and took out some healing elixirs from his storage bag for them to consume. There was no longer a need for him to make a move in this battle. Boss Su, I knew that you weren't dead. Duan Tianliang's cultivation was not high and did not join the battle. At that moment, he ran over with a fawning smile. Woof woof. Goldie barked twice at the side as well. Brother Su, the abnormality 30 years ago caused a huge commotion. Yu Hao said, it said that many Earth Immortals and Heavenly Immortals died in the abyss. After you left, there was no news of you at all. We all thought that you had, Su Zimo said. Indeed, the trip to the abyss was a narrow escape. It was a coincidence that I managed to survive in the end. Thankfully, I returned in time. Due to the existence of the Immortal Formation, most of Wind Snow Ridge was not destroyed too badly. The pursuit continued until night fell before the cultivators returned one after another. The main hall of Wind Snow Ridge was brightly lit. The leaders of the various factions were not in a hurry to leave. They were waiting for the battle to end before paying their respects. They knew that as long as Su Zimo was around, no one on Dragon Abyss Planet would be able to challenge Wind Snow Ridge. Meanwhile, Su Zimo was only a 7th-stage mystic immortal with unlimited potential. Even if they could not form an alliance with such an expert, they could not afford to offend him either. The leaders of the factions even gathered some gifts at the last minute, such as core solidifying pills, and gave them to Wind Snow Ridge to express their goodwill. Yu Hao was initially hesitant. However, Su Zimo did not reject the gifts and accepted them all. He then sent the leaders of the factions away and did not even invite them to the banquet. These leaders were people who went with the flow, thus there was no need for Su Zimo to befriend them. Su Zimo was only interested in the Twin Dragons sect. At the banquet, Su Zimo suggested that the Twin Dragons sect form an alliance with Wind Snow Ridge. Su Zimo had his own reasons for doing so. The Twin Dragons sect could not have asked for more. Whether it was the Twin Dragons sect or Yu Hao, they were all forthright people who regretted not having met earlier. They drank merrily until dawn and did not feel tired at all. Su Zimo left quietly and stood at the entrance of the main hall, looking into the distance. No one knew what he was thinking. Xia Qingying was meticulous. She vaguely sensed something and followed him out. Chapter 1904. Fellow Taoist Su. Xia Qingying came behind Su Zimo, wanting to say something but hesitated. Su Zimo said softly, I'm leaving. Xia Qingying was silent. She had already guessed it. During the banquet just now, Su Zimo took the initiative to make Feng Shuling form an alliance with the Twin Dragon sect. In fact, it was to let Feng Shuling have one more ally and leave a way out for Feng Shuling. However, now that she heard Su Zimo say it personally, a wave of complicated emotions surged in her heart. There was some reluctance and some realization. Actually, more than 100 years ago, when Xia Qingying knew that Su Zimo had passed the 4th heavenly tribulation and ascended to the upper realm, she knew that Su Zimo would definitely leave this place and leave Dragon Abyss Planet. However, she did not expect this day to come so quickly. In just over 100 years, this person had already cultivated to the 7th stage mystic immortal. This kind of cultivation speed was simply unimaginable. What was even more terrifying was that this person's position on Dragon Abyss Planet was already very important, and his reputation was also unmatched. The leaders of the various major forces had to take the initiative to befriend him. This person was like a divine dragon, but it was just a coincidence that he was stranded in the shallows. One day, he would head to an even more magnificent sea. When do you plan to leave? Xia Qingying asked. Su Zimo pondered and said, There's no hurry. I'll leave after I teach you all the spells of this immortal formation. Xia Qingying nodded in agreement. Su Zimo thought for a while and said, Also, Don't tell anyone that I'm leaving." Xia Qingying was slightly startled, but she quickly understood. As long as the cultivators outside thought that Su Zimo was still in Feng Shuling, no one would dare to have any ideas about Feng Shuling. The Battle of Dragon Abyss City, the Battle of Ziyanggu, and the elimination of 2 bandits. These 3 battles were enough to intimidate everyone. As long as there was enough time, when Yu Hao and the others grew up, even without Su Zimo, Feng Shuling would be able to stand shoulder to shoulder with the major forces. At this moment, Duan Tianliang and De Huang finished cleaning up the battlefield and ran over happily. "Boss Su, the harvest this time is too big." Duan Tianliang took out a storage bag and handed it to Su Zimo, and said excitedly, "The storage bags of 100,000 bandits, including Feng Yan and the others, are all inside." Su Zimo took the storage bag and quickly checked. The 2 bandits plundered everywhere, and there were indeed quite a number of items in their storage bags. However, there was almost nothing that was useful to Su Zimo. There were almost no other treasures to be found to be treasures. However, Su Zimo collected all the essence spirit stones in the storage bags. There were more than 400 of them. Su Zimo was to Tianliang to leave the to take to Tianliang. After pondering for a moment, Su Zimo took out another 100 essence spirit stones and handed them to Xia Qingying. To activate, to operate, to activate, to immortal, to operate, to use, to run, to use, to xiu. Leaving these 100 elemental spirit stones for Feng Shuling was also a precaution. In the following period of time, Su Zimo stayed in Feng Shuling and taught Xia Qingying and Yu Hao the runes, control, and operation of the immortal formation. Su Zimo had consumed dozens of spirit stones to break through to stage 7 Mystic Immortal. The remaining 300 spirit stones were not enough for him to break through to stage 8 Mystic Immortal. There were no spirit stones mines on Dragon Abyss planet, so it was almost impossible to obtain spirit stones. Only by leaving Dragon Abyss planet and heading to the wider Azure Cloud County would one have the chance to obtain more spirit stones. The spirit chi there was also denser, which could speed up one's cultivation. Moreover, Mei Ji was an outstanding talent among the Heaven Immortals. If she was buried here, it would inevitably attract other experts from the same sect. The longer he stayed on Dragon Abyss planet, the easier it would be for other unforeseen events to occur. A year later, Xia Qingying and Yu Hao had more or less mastered the immortal formation, and all that was left was to practice and comprehend it. Although Su Zimo had never mentioned it in the past year, Duan Tianliang, De Huang, and the rest had already vaguely sensed something. No one pointed it out. The day before Su Zimo left, he let De Huang return to his human form. On the second night, he left quietly without informing anyone. More than 100 years ago, he came to Dragon Abyss planet alone. Now, he had also left by himself. He did not owe Feng Shuling anything. All these years he had saved Feng Shuling from the brink of death several times and left behind many contingencies, giving Feng Shuling enough time to grow. The karma between him and Feng Shuling had already been severed, and there was no longer any burden in his heart. At this moment, Su Zimo, who was in midair, seemed to have sensed something. He suddenly stopped and turned around. He saw a few figures standing at Feng Shuling's door, looking at him from afar. Even though it was dark, even though they were 100 miles apart, Su Zimo could still see the faces of these people clearly. Yu Hao, Xia Qingying, Shen Fei, Gu Wenjun, Duan Tianliang, these people still came out to send him off. A warm current flowed through Su Zimo's heart. After looking at everyone for a long time, he took a deep breath and turned around. With his back facing everyone, he waved and disappeared into the night. I wonder if I'll have the chance to see Boss Su again in the future. Duan Tianliang sighed with a lonely expression. Yu Hao said, Brother Su does not belong here after all. The distance between us and him is too far. Perhaps it will only get further in the future. Shen Fei smiled and pretended to be relaxed as he said, That's good too. If there comes a day when fellow Taoist Su makes a name for himself in the Cyan Cloud County, perhaps we can brag about our experiences with him over the years. Su Zimo suppressed the melancholy of parting in his heart. He composed himself and sped towards Dragon Abyss City. His cultivation was not enough. If he wanted to leave Dragon Abyss Planet and head to Azure Cloud County, he could only use the teleportation formation in Dragon Abyss City. There were two ways to use the teleportation formation to leave. The first was to cultivate to Stage 9 Mystic Immortal. The second was to pay 100 Elemental Spirit Stones. Although it was slightly painful to pay 100 Elemental Spirit Stones. But so long as he was able to safely arrive at Azure Cloud County, he would have more opportunities to obtain even more Elemental Spirit Stones. Half a month later, Su Zimo arrived at Dragon Abyss City. After not seeing each other for a few tens of years, Dragon Abyss City had not changed much. Instead, it was the few guards at the entrance that were first stunned when they saw Su Zimo, and then their expressions changed greatly. More than half of the cultivators in the city had witnessed the battle at Dragon Abyss City with their own eyes. Not to mention, Su Zimo's reputation had risen greatly in these past few years. 1 year ago, he annihilated 2 great bandits, and he was like the sun in the midday sky. Who didn't know of him? Many guards had fearful expressions when they saw Su Zimo arrive, and they even forgot to collect Su Zimo's entrance fee. Su Zimo smiled lightly and took out 1,000 origin condensing pills, then he stuffed it into the hands of a guard and said, "Excuse me, command token." This guard subconsciously took 2 steps back with a vigilant gaze, and he paused for a moment before tossing a command token back to Su Zimo. Su Zimo received the command token. For the sake of avoiding unnecessary trouble, he directly headed towards the City Lord's estate and prepared to pay the Elemental Spirit Stones before leaving immediately. He'd incurred enmity with Lu Tong of Dragon Abyss City. If Lu Tong were to know that he'd once again entered the city, it was extremely likely that some unforeseen events would occur. Reading website M. Chapter 1905. Not long after Su Zimo entered the city, numerous guards reacted. A guard hurriedly withdrew a transmission talisman from his storage pouch and wrote a sentence on it before casually tossing it out. The talisman transformed into a flowing light and vanished. After Su Zimo entered the city, many people recognized him, and it caused a wave of commotion. He disregarded the astonished gazes of everyone and dashed forward swiftly, and it wasn't long before he'd already arrived at the City Lord's estate. There were 10 guards on both sides of the entrance of the City Lord's estate, and it was heavily guarded. Su Zimo walked forward and cupped his fists towards a tall and thin guard. "I want to borrow the teleportation formation to leave Dragon Lake Star and head to Azure Cloud County." These guards of the City Lord's estate guarded this place all year round and practically never left. When Su Zimo fought outside Dragon Lake City all those years ago, these people didn't go to the city wall to watch the battle, so they didn't recognize Su Zimo. "You!" The tall and thin guard sized up Su Zimo and couldn't help but laugh coldly when he saw the latter was only a level 7 Mystic Immortal. "If you want to borrow the teleportation formation, you have to pay 100 Elemental Spirit Stones. Can you afford it?" As far as he was concerned, not to mention this green-clothed scholar, even the various commanders of Dragon Lake City might not be able to take out 100 Elemental Spirit Stones. Su Zimo didn't argue with him. He withdrew a storage pouch that he'd prepared since long ago and opened it to reveal the 100 Elemental Spirit Stones within. The guards swept their gazes and saw it clearly, and they revealed expressions of surprise. This inconspicuous level 7 Mystic Immortal before them was actually able to casually take out 100 Elemental Spirit Stones. Greed flashed within the eyes of the tall and thin guard. He said with an expressionless face, "Follow me." Under the burning gazes of a few people, Su Zimo had a calm expression as he followed the tall and thin guard into the City Lord's estate. The tall and thin guard led the way, and Su Zimo followed closely behind. After walking for a while, the tall and thin guard suddenly turned around, and his gaze was like a torch as he asked loudly, "Speak! Where did you get these 100 Elemental Spirit Stones?" If it were anyone else, they would feel a little uneasy and nervous after entering the City Lord's mansion. After all, this city governor's estate was considered to be the most respected place in the entire Dragon Lake Star, and ordinary people utterly didn't have the chance to come into contact with it. In this kind of situation, being suddenly frightened by this tall and thin guard like this and being caught off guard, he would definitely turn pale with fright and panic in his heart. Once he showed his cowardice and was questioned by the lanky guard, he would most likely not dare to hide anything. However, when the lanky guard suddenly stopped and was about to turn around, Su Zimo seemed to have sensed it and stopped as well. The tall and thin guard's move had no effect on Su Zimo. Su Zimo only calmly looked at the tall and thin guard. He said, "By a lucky chance, I obtained several dozen spirit essence stones. The rest are the 100 spirit essence stones that I've accumulated over the years." Looking at the calm and composed Su Zimo, the tall and thin guard was slightly disappointed. "Where did you get these dozens of elemental spirit stones?" The tall and thin guard continued to ask. "That abyss." Su Zimo replied. "Numerous earth immortals and heaven immortals were buried in that abyss." Even if the tall and thin guard didn't believe it, he didn't dare to investigate. When the tall and thin guard saw Su Zimo's calm expression and flawless answer, even if he continued to ask, he was afraid that he wouldn't be able to get anything out of him. "Give me the 100 spirit essence stones." The tall and thin guard stretched out his palm and spoke with a firm tone. Su Zimo slightly raised his brows and asked in return, "Where's the teleportation array?" The tall and thin guard pointed in a direction and said, "Follow this path and walk straight. You'll see the teleportation array in about 10 minutes. Hurry up, give me the spirit essence stones." The tall and thin guard was slightly impatient and urged again. Su Zimo still didn't move and asked again, "If I give you the spirit essence stones and go to the teleportation array, I'll be able to leave this place immediately?" The tall and thin guard couldn't help but sneer and ridicule. "What a fantasy! Do you think that the teleportation array of Dragon Lake Star is only activated for you alone? Who do you think you are?" Facing the tall and thin guard's ridicule, Su Zimo wasn't annoyed. This was the city lord's residence and he didn't want to complicate matters. "What do you mean?" Su Zimo asked. The tall and thin guard said, "The teleportation array will only be activated once a year at a fixed time. It's only been 2 months since the last time it was activated. During this period, if you want to activate the teleportation array again, you'll have to gather 10 people. Su Zimo frowned. Looking at the tall and thin guard's eyes, he shouldn't be lying. However, it was impossible to gather 10 cultivators with 100 spirit essence stones in a short period of time. In other words, if he wanted to leave Dragon Lake Star, he would have to wait for at least 10 months. Under normal circumstances, 10 months would pass in the blink of an eye and it wouldn't be a big deal. However, there was a high chance that Lu Tong had already found out about his whereabouts. The longer he stayed, the easier it was for changes to occur. "Give me the spirit essence stones and come back after 10 months. The tall and thin guard's tone became increasingly impatient. Su Zimo took out his storage bag and was about to hand it over to the tall and thin guard when he suddenly retracted it and asked with a smile that wasn't a smile, "If I give you the spirit essence stones and you suddenly don't admit it after 10 months? Insolent." The tall and thin guard's face changed and revealed killing intent. He indeed had such a plan. Now that it was suddenly exposed by Su Zimo, he couldn't help but fly into a rage out of humiliation and had the intention to kill. When Su Zimo saw the tall and thin guard's reaction, it confirmed his conjecture even more. He put away the storage bag and said indifferently, "Since that's the case, I'll come back after 10 months. At that time, I'll naturally hand over the spirit essence stones with both hands." After saying that, Su Zimo turned around and left, preparing to leave Dragon Lake City first and lie low for the time being. "Without my permission, don't even think about leaving." The tall and thin guard's expression was gloomy and murderous. He took a step forward and suddenly attacked, slapping down towards the top of Su Zimo's head. This time, the tall and thin guard didn't hold back and actually wanted to slap Su Zimo to death with a single palm strike. Su Zimo's eyes narrowed and killing intent arose within him as well. This tall and thin guard was only a 7th-level mysterious immortal. He had 100 methods to instantly annihilate this guard. But, if he killed this person, it would surely cause a stir in the city governor's estate and Dragon Lake City. At that time, the city governor's estate would strengthen its guard, and it would be impossible for him to use the teleportation formation to leave. When he thought up to here, Su Zimo's figure flashed and easily avoided the tall and thin guard's palm strike. Then he turned around and looked over with an icy cold gaze. As a guard of the city governor's estate, you intend to openly seize it? Su Zimo spoke slowly. The tall and thin guard gritted his teeth and sneered. I want to openly seize it. What can you do to me? You lowly servant, it's your honor that I'm willing to take your spirit essence stones. Clang. The tall and thin guard drew out a long saber that flickered with bright light and said with a cold voice, Since you don't know what's good for you, then I'll send you to see the king of hell today. As he spoke, the vital energy and blood within the tall and thin guard's body rose as he merged with his saber and descended from the sky, tearing through the sky as he slashed down with the force of a thunderbolt. Su Zimo's face sank and cold lights flickered within his eyes. He was already prepared to make a move and leave this place immediately after he killed this person, then flee Dragon Lake City and conceal himself before making further plans. With his current ability, even if the city governor of Dragon Lake City personally made a move, the city governor would be unable to stop him. Fupin Chinese. Chapter 1906. Su Zimo's expression was calm as he looked at the tall skinny guard who was descending from the skies with a menacing aura. The tall skinny guard sneered internally. When he saw that Su Zimo was a Class 7 Mystic Immortal, he did not dare to be careless. He did not hold back at all and released his full strength with that slash. To think that the Class 7 Mystic Immortal seemed to have been scared silly and gave up on resisting. The tall skinny guard watched as the saber was about to slice the green-robed scholar into two. However, the latter suddenly attacked. He didn't make any complicated movements, nor did he use any secret techniques or divine abilities. He simply reached out his hand and grabbed the long saber. A mantis trying to stop a chariot. The tall skinny guard hollered and channeled his blood chi, causing his saber to shine brightly. When the saber landed on the green-robed scholar's palm, there was no blood splattering as the tall skinny guard had imagined. Not only that, his supreme-grade profound-grade saber was unable to leave a single mark on this seemingly fair and delicate palm. To be precise, there was not even a single mark. All the strength he had unleashed was like a stone sinking into the sea, disappearing without a trace. How was that possible? The tall skinny guard's eyes widened in disbelief as he froze on the spot. Right then, Su Zimo closed his fingers and gripped the tall skinny guard's saber, exerting strength in his palm. Snap! There was a crisp sound. The tall skinny guard shuddered and his pupils constricted to the size of needles. The saber in his hand was snapped by Su Zimo single-handedly. Pissed! The tall skinny guard was horrified as he looked at Su Zimo as though he was looking at a ghost. That was a method that was beyond his understanding. His saber was a supreme-grade mystic Dharma treasure and could only be snapped by a connate mystic Dharma treasure. However, there were no traces of Dharma treasures on this person's palm. Now that Su Zimo was at level 7 mystic essence realm, Qinglian's true body was growing continuously as well. If he were to use his full strength, Qinglian's true body could take on connate mystic Dharma treasures head-on and naturally destroy the saber with ease. The tall and skinny guard froze in place. Su Zimo's attack did not stop. He broke the long saber and held half of the saber in his hand. He took a step forward and slammed this half of the saber into the tall and thin guard's face. Puchi! The blade pierced through his head, piercing through his sea of consciousness. Su Zimo, how dare you! At this moment, a stern shout came from not far away. Su Zimo! Are you Su Zimo? The skinny guard's essence spirit was about to dissipate. Before he died, he heard that name and finally realized who the green-robed cultivator before him was. Unfortunately, when he realized this, it was already too late. Su Zimo slowly turned around and looked over. Not far away, a few hundred Dragon Lake City guards were dashing over swiftly with surging killing intent, and the person in the lead was precisely the commander that had incurred enmity with him, Lu Tong. Su Zimo spread out his divine sense and swept it over Lu Tong. He couldn't help but frown slightly. A 9th-level mysterious immortal. All those years ago, Lu Tong had used a secret technique to pursue him, yet returned without success and even injured his vitality. She didn't know what fortuitous encounter this person obtained, but he actually recovered from his injuries within a few tens of years and even stepped into the 9th level of the mysterious origin realm. Surround him. Lu Tong swiftly gave the order and said in a low voice, "Activate the grand formation of the City Lord's estate. We absolutely can't allow this kid to escape this place." The few hundred city guards swiftly spread out and surrounded Su Zimo at the center. Every single one of them withdrew their magic treasures with vigilant expressions, and they were prepared to make a move at any moment. At the same time, a blue-colored barrier stretched out from the walls of the City Lord's estate, and it enveloped the entire City Lord's estate tightly. A grand formation was set up in the surroundings of the City Lord's estate. Lu Tong's actions were obviously because he was worried that Su Zimo would withdraw the golden-winged rock and soar into the sky to flee Dragon Lake City. Only after he finished doing all this did Lu Tong walk over and stop before Su Zimo, and then he sneered lightly. "Su Zimo, I was just about to go look for you, but I never imagined that you would deliver yourself to me. Do you think you can stop me with just these few people?" Su Zimo's expression was indifferent as he replied with a question. "Haha." Lu Tong laughed loudly. "You're really at death's door, yet you still don't know it. You still dare to kill in the City Lord's estate. You won't be able to escape today even if you grow wings." Lu Tong withdrew his saber from his storage pouch and stared fixedly at Su Zimo with surging killing intent. So long as he gave the order, a great battle would erupt. "All of you stay your hands." Right at this moment, a berating voice sounded out from the depths of the City Lord's estate, and the voice was slightly immature, seeming to be young. Su Zimo frowned and his expression was strange. He actually felt this voice to be slightly familiar, as if he'd heard it somewhere before. Su Zimo looked over in the direction of the voice. A young man walked over from not far away. At the 6th level of the Mystic Essence realm, he already revealed a dignified bearing as he walked despite his young age. "It's him!" Su Zimo was slightly stunned. This young man was the person he accidentally saved in the black fog in the abyss back then, Su Shaun. Mystic immortals had a lifespan of 100,000 years. Therefore, Su Shaotian still had the appearance of a young man after dozens of years and was not much different from before. "Greetings, little young master." When the hundreds of guards saw Su Shaotian, they actually put down their dermic treasures and cupped their fists in greeting. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. By the looks of it, Su Shaotian's status in the City Lord's estate was not low. Back then, Su Shaotian wore a jade pendant on his waist. It was precisely with that jade pendant that he was able to survive in the black fog for a long time before he finally met Su Zimo. A cultivator who could possess a jade pendant treasure like that naturally had an extraordinary background. From the way the guards addressed him, there was an extremely high chance that Su Shaotian was the child of Dragon Lake City's City Lord. Su Zimo relaxed and was prepared to wait and see. It would naturally be best if the current situation could be resolved without a huge battle. If he really started a massacre in the City Lord's estate, even if he escaped to Azure Cloud County in the future, he would be hunted down by the immortal army of the Dajin Celestial Nation and would never have a day of peace. "Shaun, what are you doing here?" Lu Tong frowned. Su Shaotian bowed to Lu Tong like a junior and said, "Uncle Lu, I saw that the City Lord's estate's array was suddenly activated, so I came over to take a look. What are you guys doing? Why are you at daggers drawn?" "Don't bother about this, I'll handle it." Lu Tong waved his hand. Su Shaotian glanced at Su Zimo and gave the latter a comforting look. He then turned to look at Lu Tong and said firmly, "Uncle Lu, you can't touch this person." Lu Tong's expression changed and he berated, "What did you say?" "This person killed someone in the City Lord's estate, and he even killed the guards of the Dajin Celestial Nation. He deserves to die 1,000 times over. How dare you say that I can't touch him? You're still young, hurry up and back off. Don't meddle in this matter." Lu Tong's tone became sterner. However, Su Shaotian still stood in front of Su Zimo and did not budge at all. He said in a deep voice, "Uncle Lu, this person saved my life before. Lu Tong's face turned completely gloomy. He said coldly, just because he saved your life, he can kill the guards of the Dajin celestial nation at will? Not to mention you, even your father can't protect him in this matter. The aura emitted from Lu Tong's body became increasingly fierce and suppressed toward Su Xiaotian. After all, Su Xiaotian was only a stage 6 mystic immortal. Under this aura, his face turned pale and he could not hold on any longer. However, he still looked stubborn and refused to retreat. He clenched his fists and argued, "Uncle Lu, there might be something hidden in this. Get lost." Lu Tong interrupted him directly. His gaze was cold as he said coldly, "If you dare to stop me again, I'll suppress you too." Chapter 1907. Who do you want to suppress? Right at this moment, an icy cold voice sounded out of thin air. Nearby, a middle-aged man was walking over with a cold expression, bright eyes, and a trace of dignity between his brows. City Governor. All the guards of Dragon Lake City hurriedly bowed when they saw this person. Father. Su Xiaoyan had a delighted expression when he saw this person, and he called out, "Dragon Lake City's governor, Su Shi." Su Zimo's gaze moved around Su Shi and Lu Tong as he compared them in his heart. Even though both of them were 9th-level mysterious immortals, Su Shi's imposing aura obviously suppressed Lu Tong. Lu Tong seemed to be unable to match Su Shi's gaze, and he lowered his head slightly while concealing his gloomy expression as he cupped his hands and said, "I was anxious for a moment and wanted to kill the villain, so my words were slightly intense. I hope City Governor can forgive me." Su Xiaotian's pitch-black eyes spun as he hurriedly sent a voice transmission to Su Shi. "Father, he's Su Zimo, the person that saved me in the abyss all those years ago." Su Shi's expression remained unchanged, and he didn't even spare a glance at Su Zimo, and he only looked at Lu Tong as he asked, "Commander Lu, who's the villain you spoke of?" "It's him." Lu Tong stretched out his hand and pointed at Su Zimo as he said with a low voice, "Even though I have some personal enmity with this person, I won't use my position to avenge a personal grudge. But just now, this person has killed the guards of the city governor's estate, and I saw it with my own 2 eyes. The nearby guards nodded and chimed in. "We saw it as well." Su Shi glanced at the fallen corpse and didn't say anything, and he still had an expressionless face. Little Tian just now said that this person saved him before. But even then, this person still can't escape the death penalty for killing someone within the city governor's estate. Lu Tong's expression was furious as he said loudly, "Killing an immortal soldier of my Darjin Empire is provoking the dignity of the Darjin Empire, and it's an unforgivable crime." "Exactly. All right, it should be like this." Lu Tong's words were spoken resolutely and powerfully, and it instantly drew the agreement of many Dragon Lake City guards. Lu Tong's eyes flashed with an imperceptible smugness. He cupped his hands again and looked at Su Shi meaningfully. He smiled and asked, "This is no small matter. I believe that the city lord will not be biased, right?" Su Zimo frowned. Although Lu Tong's last sentence was respectful, it seemed to be overstepping his boundaries and even revealed a trace of aggressiveness. Su Shi was still expressionless. No one could tell if he was happy or angry. Su Zimo's gaze lingered on Su Shi and Lu Tong, deep in thought. The city lord's mansion fell into silence, and the atmosphere became somewhat oppressive. Su Zimo, on the other hand, looked relaxed, as if the matter in front of him had nothing to do with him. "Father, I believe there must be some misunderstanding," Su Xiaoyan said anxiously when he saw that the situation was not right. "Is there a misunderstanding?" Su Shi finally opened his mouth and asked. This, Su Xiaotian was speechless. Su Shi's gaze turned to look at the nearby Su Zimo and said slowly, "If you killed my soldiers for no reason, then you indeed deserve death." Su Zimo's heart moved as he heard the meaning behind Su Shi's words. He cupped his fists and said, "I was truly forced to injure them." Subsequently, Su Zimo recounted the scene that happened just now. These were all facts, and he had no need to conceal them. Lu Tong frowned deeply when he heard. "Father, look, I told you I don't blame Big Brother Su." Su Xiaotian said with a smile. After he finished speaking, he even specially raised his leg and kicked the tall and thin guard's corpse and berated, "You've really lost face for our Dragon Lake City and lost face for the Dajin Empire." Lu Tong naturally refused to give up and said in a low voice, "So what if the soldiers of my Dajin Empire seized his origin spirit stones? They don't deserve death. He's only a lowly servant." Su Shi's gaze swept over as his eyes narrowed slightly, and he said in an icy cold tone, "Commander Lu, I also ascended from the lower dimensions. Could it be that I'm also a lowly servant in your eyes?" "This subordinate dares not." Lu Tong lowered his head slightly and said, although he said he didn't dare, his expression didn't have the slightest bit of fear, and it was instead slightly disdainful. Su Zimo looked at this scene and pondered. Although the confrontation between Su Shi and Lu Tong was short, it revealed a lot of information. The city lord of Dragon Lake City was also someone that ascended from the lower dimensions. And Lu Tong obviously knew this. Just now, although what he said was targeted at Su Zimo, it was more likely to be scolding him indirectly. Su Shi heard it, and that was why he retaliated. But the strange thing was that Su Shi didn't really punish Lu Tong for his repeated offense. Su Zimo vaguely felt that after Lu Tong advanced to the 9th stage of the mystic immortal realm, it was extremely likely that he would challenge Su Shi for the position of City Lord. Perhaps the two of them already had a tacit understanding and were secretly wrestling with each other. But because of the incident today and his unintentional intrusion, a head-on conflict had arisen between the two of them. Su Shi looked around the surroundings and said slowly, "As a soldier of my Dajin immortal kingdom, you actually openly seized the origin spirit stones of another in Dragon Lake City. How is your actions different from those bandits outside? If I knew about this, I would personally kill him as a warning to others." These words were spoken extremely heavily, and the meaning behind his words was that the tall and thin guard deserved death. "Disperse." Su Shi lightly waved his hand before turning around and leaving. Su Xiaotian secretly tugged on Su Zimo's sleeve and sent a voice transmission. "Big brother Su, follow me." As he spoke, Su Xiaotian brought along Su Zimo and chased after Su Shi. Lu Tong's expression was gloomy, and he didn't speak a single word. The few hundred guards in the surroundings glanced at each other and didn't stop Su Xiaotian. These guards were able to sense the subtle changes that had occurred between Lu Tong and Su Shi. But no matter what, the current city lord was still Su Shi. No one was an idiot and wouldn't be the first to stand out. Lu Tong could only watch on helplessly as Su Zimo gradually walked further and further away before vanishing from his line of sight. But in next to no time, Lu Tong seemed to have thought of something and laughed coldly. On the other side, Su Zimo and Su Shaolin followed behind Su Shi and conversed in low voices. Not long after, a large hall appeared before them. It was piled up with limestone, and it was dignified and solemn. Su Shi directly walked in and sat on the city lord's seat at the center of the hall before looking down at Su Zimo, who had entered the hall. Just now, Su Shi had appeared and didn't even look Su Zimo in the eye. Only now did he start to carefully examine Su Zimo. His gaze was slightly frightening, as if he wanted to clearly see through the latter. Su Shi stared at Su Zimo for a long time and noticed that even with his experience, he was completely unable to see through this seemingly weak scholar before him. The more it was like this, the more suspicious he was. In these past few years, a genius had appeared on Dragon Lake Star and he'd naturally heard of it. Moreover, this person had even saved little Tian before. Could there be some conspiracy behind this? What secrets does this person have? Does this person have any other intentions? If he didn't have this cautiousness, Su Shi would have died countless times, and it would be impossible for him to stand out from the numerous people that ascended from the lower dimensions and ascend to the position of City Lord of Dragon Lake City step by step. Even though he was the City Lord of a remote star, but with the identity of ascending from the lower dimensions, there probably wasn't a second person in the entire Azure Cloud County or even the Dajin Immortal Kingdom that could reach this position. Chapter 1908. When faced with the scrutinizing gaze of this person with the highest authority and status on Dragon Lake Star, Su Zimo's expression was calm, and he only cupped his hands and said, "Thank you, City Lord, for lending a hand." No matter if it was for the sake of deterring Lu Tong or for some other reason, Su Shi had stood out and blocked off trouble for him after all. If it wasn't for Su Shi, then even if he was able to escape from the slaughter in Dragon Lake City, there would be endless trouble in the future and endless future troubles. Su Zimo. Su Shi nodded slowly and said, "I've heard of you since long ago. During these past few years, you've caused quite a commotion on Dragon Lake Star." Su Zimo didn't discern Su Shi's meaning and went silent. Su Shi didn't continue discussing this matter as well, and he suddenly changed the topic. "I heard that your natural talent is extremely strong, your combat strength is peerless, and you're able to surmount levels to kill opponents. You were only a 5th-rank mysterious immortal that day, yet you were able to kill a 7th-rank mysterious immortal." "I was just lucky," Su Zimo said. Su Shi stared at Su Zimo with a brilliant gaze as he said faintly, "If it's deduced like this, then you're a 7th-rank mysterious immortal now. Doesn't that mean you possess the combat strength to kill me?" This sentence revealed a trace of heart-wrenching meaning. It gave others the feeling that if Su Zimo's answer wasn't right, then Su Shi would suddenly make a move and kill the threat that was Su Zimo in advance. Su Shaon felt that the atmosphere was off and was restless, and he couldn't help but say, "Father, Big Brother Su is my savior, how could he make a move to harm you? Don't keep a straight face, it's so scary." "City Lord, you're joking, I wouldn't dare." Su Zimo spoke indifferently. He only said he wouldn't dare, yet didn't say he couldn't. Su Shi was naturally able to discern the minute difference within. But he didn't get angry, and he instead roared with laughter. Good. Su Zimo, you really have courage, I like it. You've saved Xiaoyan and possess such natural talent and combat strength. Why don't you stay in Dragon Lake City and help me? Don't worry, your status in Dragon Lake City will be comparable to the other commanders, and I'll provide you with a considerable amount of origin condensation pills to cultivate. Su Shan was overjoyed and hurriedly said, "Big Brother Su, quickly agree. You can stay and accompany Xiaotian. We can cultivate together." To be on the same level as a commander and even provide origin condensing pills, this could be considered an extremely sincere invitation. However, if Su Zimo wanted to cultivate quickly, what he needed was elemental spirit stones. The soul-solidifying pill was not very attractive to him. As for the position of commander, Su Zimo wasn't interested in it. After Lu Tong became a rank 9 mystic immortal, it was extremely likely that a battle for the position of City Lord would erupt between him and Su Shi in the future. If he stayed behind to help Su Shi, he would definitely be drawn into this battle. Su Zimo did not have the energy and mind to get involved in this kind of power struggle. Su Zimo pondered for a moment before saying, "I'm indebted to the City Lord for thinking so highly of me. However, my mind isn't here, and I still want to leave Dragon Abyss Planet as soon as possible." "Are you really leaving?" Su Shi frowned slightly. Su Zimo nodded. Su Shi didn't feel any regret or pity when he saw Su Zimo refuse his invitation, and instead, a trace of relief flashed past his eyes as if he was relieved of a heavy burden. His invitation just now was only a test. If Su Zimo really stayed behind, then he would surely keep a close eye on Su Zimo and be on full alert. Now that Su Zimo had made up his mind to leave, it instead allowed him to put down a load on his mind. Su Xiaotian had a reluctant expression instead. Su Zimo thought for a moment before asking, "I heard Lu Tong say that the teleportation formation of Dragon Abyss City can only be used once a year. I wonder if this is true?" "It is indeed so." Su Shi was in a good mood, and he waved his hand and said, "However, you're Xiaotian's savior, so it's not a big deal for me to give the order to activate the teleportation formation for you alone. You don't have to pay the 100 elemental spirit stones as well." "Thank you, City Lord." Su Zimo was secretly delighted in his heart as he thanked Su Shi. This way, not only could he leave Dragon Abyss Planet immediately, he could also save 100 elemental spirit stones. Elemental spirit stones were too important to him. Su Shi raised his hand and threw a token to Su Xiang, saying, "Take my token and bring Su Zimo over. You can activate the teleportation formation directly." Finished speaking, Su Shi turned around and left. "Big brother Su, follow me." Su Xiaotian brought Su Zimo and walked towards the direction of the teleportation formation of the city lord's estate. On the way, Su Xiaotian still couldn't resist asking, "Big brother Su, are you really not planning on staying? My father was a little rude to you earlier, but he's actually a very nice person." Su Zimo smiled and lightly patted Su Xiaotian's shoulder, saying, "Actually, your father's vigilance towards me isn't without reason." Su Xiaotian had a puzzled expression. Su Zimo explained, "I've indeed saved you before, but how much do you know about me? How do you know that my actions aren't to get close to your father or have some other motive?" Su Xiaotian stammered a few times before saying, "Big brother Su, you won't." Although he said that, he did not have any confidence and felt a little guilty. He realized that he knew nothing about Su Zimo other than the other party's name. Su Zimo smiled and said, "The pugilistic world is dangerous. It's never wrong to be cautious." Su Xiaotian nodded vigorously. The two of them walked through the twisting stone path in the garden. Before long, the path ahead opened up and a teleportation formation made of many green stones appeared. Every piece of blue stone was engraved with mysterious and complicated runes. The final teleportation formation was formed by so many green stones placed together. Around the teleportation formation, 4 to 5 guards were guarding it. Su Xiaotian stepped forward and took out the city lord's token, saying, "Guard Chui, this is my father's token. He wants you to activate the teleportation formation and send someone away." Guard Chui's face was slightly red as he avoided eye contact and said embarrassedly, "Little young master, I'm really sorry. This teleportation formation is broken." "What?" Su Xiaotian frowned and scolded. "Why is the teleportation formation suddenly broken? How are you guys guarding it?" Although he was young, he already had a dignified aura. Su Zimo stepped forward and looked around the teleportation formation. Soon, he discovered the problem and pointed to a long green stone. "This green stone is broken. It can't be an accident for it to be broken to such an extent. It must be caused by an external force." In other words, someone did not want him to leave and destroyed the teleportation formation on purpose. Su Xiaotian's expression was cold as he said in a deep voice, "Guard Chui, how dare you? This isn't my fault." Guard Chui rubbed his hands and laughed dryly. "It was fine before, but it was broken. I'm definitely not the one who did it." "Then who is it?" Su Xiaotian asked. "I don't know either," Guard Chui said with a fake smile. Although he was respectful towards this little young master before him on the surface, he truly did not take him to heart. Su Xiaotian gripped his fists and said coldly, "You're guarding this place, but you don't know who broke the teleportation formation. That's your negligence. I'll report to my father right now and punish you for your negligence." When Guard Chui heard Su Xiaotian mention the city lord, he panicked and stammered, "Commander Lu came earlier and asked us to leave for a period of time before we left. We don't know what happened during that period of time." "It's Lu Tong." Su Xiaotian gritted his teeth with an indignant expression. Chapter 1909. Su Xiaotian asked, "How long will it take to repair this formation?" "Don't worry, little young master. I'll definitely be able to repair the teleportation formation within half a year." Bodyguard Chui swore solemnly. "That long?" Su Xiaotian frowned. He knew nothing about the Tao of array formations and could not be of much help. Su Zimo looked at the green stone for a while before turning around. He looked at Bodyguard Chui and said indifferently, 20 days is enough to repair this green stone." Actually, Su Zimo's figure was a little conservative. He did not know much about the formation patterns of teleportation formations. If he knew the formation patterns of teleportation formations like the back of his hand, he would be able to repair this green stone within 10 days. "You," Bodyguard Chui blushed and straightened his neck, wanting to argue. However, he felt guilty after Su Zimo's gaze and said weakly, Do you know anything about formations? A little. Su Zimo's gaze was bright as he said resolutely, "Give me 20 days and I'll be able to repair the formation patterns of this teleportation formation." Su Shan glared at Bodyguard Chui and shouted, "How dare you lie to me?" Bodyguard Chui was sweating profusely and looked flustered as he explained hurriedly, "Don't be angry, little young master. The half a year I said was just in case. Under normal circumstances, it won't take half a year. Don't worry, little young master. I'll definitely do my best to repair the teleportation formation within 20 days. Su Xiaotian said in a deep voice, "If the teleportation formation can't be activated after 20 days, you'll be guilty of dereliction of duty." Bodyguard Chui bowed and nodded repeatedly. "Brother Su, let's go." Su Xiaotian called out. Su Zimo stood motionless, deep in thought. Su Xiaoyan thought that Su Zimo was a little disappointed and consoled. "Brother Su, don't worry. I'll prepare a room for you. You can settle down first. It's only 20 days and it'll pass in the blink of an eye." "There's no need." Su Zimo suddenly waved his hand and said, "I'll stand guard here." Su Xiaotian was stunned for a moment and quickly understood. He asked, "Big Brother Su, are you worried that Lu Tong will come back and destroy the teleportation array again?" Su Zimo shook his head and did not explain. What Su Xiaotian said was only one of the reasons. Su Zimo was thinking about something else. Lu Tong's move to destroy the teleportation formation was not a brilliant move. It could not even be considered a scheme. At most, it could only delay him for 20 days. What was Lu Tong trying to do? Could it be that he just wanted to vent his anger? Su Zimo was a little worried that something else would happen in the next 20 days. Of course, it would be best if he didn't. If he stayed here, he could use this opportunity to learn how to control the teleportation formation's runes. In the future, even if no one helped him, he would be able to activate the teleportation formations in the major cities by himself. "Big Brother Su, I'll accompany you." Su Xiaoyan patted his chest and said righteously. Guard Chui cried out bitterly at the side. He did not dare to slack off under Su Xiaoyan's watch and could only repair the teleportation formation with all his might. Su Zimo also started to learn the teleportation formation's runes. The teleportation formation was considered a relatively common formation in the upper realm. With his comprehension of formations, it was not difficult for him to comprehend and control these formation runes. Time passed bit by bit. In the next few days, the City Lord's mansion and Dragon Lake City were the same as usual. There was nothing unusual. Lu Tong did not appear again. In the blink of an eye, 10 days had passed and the teleportation formation entered the end of its repair. On this day, the City Lord, Su Shi, appeared and called Su Zimo and Su Xiaotian over. He said, "Lu Tong sent an invitation. He's holding a banquet in his mansion today and invited the various commanders and us to go over." "All right, I'll go ask him why he destroyed the teleportation formation." Su Shan was still indignant when he thought of this. "Shan." Su Shi frowned slightly and said, "Don't mention this again." Su Xiaotian puckered his lips and didn't say another word. Su Zimo pondered for a moment before declining. "City Lord, I have some enmity with Lu Tong, and I'm not familiar with the other commanders, so I won't go. It's precisely because of this that you should attend the banquet." Su Shi said, "Lu Tong held the banquet today with the intention of easing the tension between the two of you. It's best that you don't form any enmity with him." Su Zimo's expression was calm, and he disapproved in his heart. Once the teleportation formation was repaired, he would leave Dragon Lake Star. So what if he formed enmity with Lu Tong? In all fairness, Su Zimo really didn't take Lu Tong seriously. Su Shi seemed to have seen through Su Zimo's thoughts and shook his head lightly. "Lu Tong has a senior brother in Azure Cloud County, and I heard he's an earthly immortal realm expert." Su Zimo's brows raised slightly. Su Shi said, "I can only warn you up to here." Su Zimo gradually came to an understanding. Before this, Su Shi had always been patient with Lu Tong, and what he was worried about was probably this senior brother of Lu Tong. Su Shi was reminding Su Zimo out of good intentions that there was no need to become enemies with Lu Tong and offend an earthly immortal realm expert. Su Zimo was silent for a moment before he said, "City Lord, forgive me for being presumptuous, but Lu Tong is already a 9th stage mystic immortal. Aren't you worried that he'll join forces with that earthly immortal realm expert to replace you?" These words were already slightly overboard. If Su Shi turned hostile on the spot and accused Su Zimo of sowing discord, it wasn't impossible. However, as far as Su Zimo was concerned, the timing of the banquet Lu Tong held today was a little coincidental, and it probably wouldn't be a good banquet. "Ha!" Su Shi roared with laughter and said, "You're worrying too much. I'm the city lord appointed by the county governor of Azure Cloud County. If Lu Tong dares to join forces with outsiders to make a move against me, he'll be besieged by the Azure Cloud County. Not to mention earthly immortals, even heavenly immortals and sects can't offend the dignity of the Azure Cloud County." Su Xiaotian asked with slight worry, "Then Lu Tong won't make a move against Big Brother Su during the banquet, right?" "Don't worry," Su Shi said, "with me around, I can guarantee Su Zimo's safety." Su Zimo pondered for a moment and didn't refuse anymore. The three of them left the city lord's estate and quickly arrived at Lu Tong's estate. Su Shi was rather familiar with this governor's estate. He walked along the stone path and arrived before a large hall before long. The large hall was slightly empty. There was only one person sitting in the middle, and it was Lu Tong. Su Shi narrowed his eyes slightly. Something was wrong. The surroundings of this large hall seemed to be too quiet, and there weren't even any attendants or maidservants. Moreover, this banquet would normally invite all the governors of Dragon Lake City. But now, there were only the three of them. Could it be that Lu Tong really has ill intentions? Su Shi frowned secretly. Ever since Lu Tong advanced to a 9th stage mystic immortal, the relationship between the two of them had undergone a subtle change. However, the two of them had always maintained restraint and didn't shed all pretenses of cordiality. He was the city lord appointed by the county governor of Azure Cloud County. Normally speaking, it was impossible for Lu Tong to replace him. Moreover, he didn't want to eliminate Lu Tong and offend the earthly immortal expert behind Lu Tong because of this and offend a great enemy for no reason. Chapter 1910. Su Shi stood at the entrance of the hall and spread out his divine sense to search the surroundings a few times, yet he didn't notice anything unusual. There was only Lu Tong within the hall. Su Shi's heart eased up slightly, and he took the lead to enter the hall. Su Zimo was searching the surroundings as well, and he didn't notice any danger with his spirit sense. "Where are the others?" Su Shi looked at Lu Tong and asked bluntly. "Sit." Lu Tong didn't stand up and still sat at the seat at the center, and he pointed to the side seat below him as he spoke with a spurious smile. Normally speaking, even if it was a banquet held in Lu Tong's estate, with their identities, it ought to be Su Shi who sat at the host seat. Yet now, not only did Lu Tong not stand up and give way, he even pointed to the guest seat at the side to ask Su Shi to sit, and this had already broken the rules. Su Shan was furious in his heart and was unable to restrain himself, and he was just about to speak when he was pressed down by Su Shi. Su Shi's expression was calm and he wasn't angry, and he called Su Xiaotian and Su Zimo over to the guest seat below him to sit down. "Speak, why did you call me over?" Su Shi went straight to the point and asked bluntly. "All right, I won't beat around the bush." Lu Tong smiled and said, "I called all of you over today for two things. Firstly, kill Su Zimo." When he spoke up to here, Lu Tong paused slightly and looked at the expressions of Su Shi and the others. Su Shi and Su Zimo's expressions remained unchanged, and only Su Xiaotian glared angrily at him. The smile in Lu Tong's eyes grew wider as he continued. "The second thing is that you've sat on the position of city governor for so long, and it's time for you to give it up." Su Shi laughed lightly and replied with a question. "Give it up to who?" "Of course it's me." Lu Tong stood up and spread open his arms as he said proudly, "On Dragon Lake Star, in terms of background and combat strength, only I have the qualifications to be city governor. Su Shi, even if you cultivate to the 9th level of the mysterious immortal realm, you're only a person from the lower dimensions, and you'll never be able to escape the identity of a servant. You don't have the qualifications to challenge me. Su Shi also slowly got up, exuding an extremely sharp aura. He stared at Lu Tong with an unfriendly expression. Su Zimo looked on coldly. Before this, Su Shi and Lu Tong both had a tacit understanding and did not shed all pretenses of cordiality. But now, Lu Tong had invited Su Shi here and taken the initiative to expose this matter. He must have prepared some sort of backup plan. Don't be nervous, Lu Tong said with a smile. Su Shi, I'm giving you this opportunity because we've known each other for so many years. You have to think about it carefully. If you take the initiative to withdraw, you might be able to save the lives of your family. If you refuse to come to your senses and refuse to abdicate, then don't blame me for being merciless and killing you. Oh! Su Shi's aura suddenly soared, as if he had broken through some kind of shackle and reached a whole new level. He said slowly, I'd like to see how you're going to kill me. Earth Immortal. Moreover, it was a second-stage Earth Immortal. Su Zimo nodded secretly. As expected of the lord of a city, Su Shi had concealed his strength so deeply. Judging from Lu Tong and Su Xiaoyan's astonishment, there was probably no one in the entire Dragon Lake City who knew of Su Shi's true cultivation. No wonder Su Shi dared to attend Lu Tong's banquet fearlessly. However, what caused Su Zimo to feel uneasy was that apart from the initial astonishment, there was no fear in Lu Tong's reaction. Lu Tong shook his head and looked at Su Shi pitifully. This is the path you chose. Don't blame me. As he spoke, Lu Tong retreated. All of a sudden, Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat as though he sensed something. He turned around abruptly and looked behind him. Unknowingly, there was actually an additional person at the entrance of the hall. Even with his spiritual perception, he hadn't noticed when this person had appeared. It was a middle-aged man with a tall figure. He stood at the entrance of the hall like a guardian and emitted an extremely terrifying aura that sealed off all paths of retreat. Earth Immortal. The middle-aged man was an Earth Immortal as well. Moreover, the aura he emitted was obviously much stronger than Su Shi's. Su Shi's attention was originally on Lu Tong. At this moment, he seemed to have realized something and turned around. Seeing the middle-aged man, Su Shi's pupils shrank. He used his spirit perception to scan the area and his expression changed drastically. Rank 7 Earth Immortal. Senior brother, it's fortunate that you're here. I'll leave Su Shi to you, Lu Tong said with a smile. Su Shi's expression turned ugly. He knew that Lu Tong had a senior brother who was an Earth Immortal expert. However, he did not expect this Earth Immortal expert to be of such a high rank. He had reached rank 7. Su Zimo's expression turned solemn as well. The strength of a rank 7 Earth Immortal had far exceeded what he could endure. Now, the two sacred beast souls on the walls of the bronze square cauldron had exhausted their energy and were in a deep slumber. Among all his techniques, there were only a few that could threaten an Earth Immortal, let alone a rank 7 Earth Immortal. Su Shi quickly calmed down and took out a jade token from his storage bag. On it were the words Dragon Origin. I have the Dragon Abyss token personally issued by the County Chief of Azure Cloud County, Su Shi said in a low voice. As long as I crush the Dragon Abyss token, I can inform the County Chief of what happened here. By then, the two of you will be hunted down by the immortal soldiers of Azure Cloud County, let alone the County Chief of Dragon Lake City. Neither of you will be able to escape. Servants nowadays are so arrogant. The middle-aged man placed his hands behind his back and looked arrogant. He lifted his head slightly and did not look at Su Zimo and the other two. You can try crushing it, the middle-aged man said mockingly, as if he did not care at all. Su Shi held the Dragon Abyss token tightly and said nervously, although you're a rank 7 Earth Immortal, if you provoke the Executioner Guards, there will be no place for you in the entire Dajin Immortal Nation. Have you seen the Executioner Guards? The middle-aged man asked with a half-smile. So what if I've seen them? So what if I haven't? Su Shi was still confronting the middle-aged man and his tone was not weak. Today, I'll let you know why you're going to die. The middle-aged man smiled faintly and slapped his storage bag. He took out a black armor and put it on. The armor looked extremely heavy, as if it was made of countless metal feathers. It was compact and detailed, emitting a murderous aura and flowing with divine light. Su Shi's expression changed and his face turned pale. It was as if he had lost his soul and his aura was gone. Even when he sensed that the middle-aged man was a rank 7 mystic immortal, Su Shi did not have such a reaction. Su Zimo did not understand why Su Shi's fighting spirit would crumble when he saw the armor. It was as if he had seen a ghost. Black gold, feather armor, executioner guards. Su Shi's lips trembled slightly as he uttered a few words. Clang. The middle-aged man pulled out the long saber hanging on his waist. A gust of cold air spread out and the temperature in the hall plummeted. Even Su Zimo could not help but shiver. The long saber shone with a cold light and was filled with blood chi. On both sides of the saber, there were 2 words, executioner and executioner. Fupin Chinese, you're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.